All aboard this episode of View the Right Thing. On this installment, Wes and Steve hitch a ride with a review of Sullivan's Travels. Then they jump ship to 1935's Mutiny on the Bounty. Get ready. It's time for View the Right Thing.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode
Indiana
of
Jaws.
View the Right Thing.
Are you sure?
I'm 100%.
I remember when we voted, I thought Indiana Jaws was the clear winner.
You're never going to stop doing this, are you?
Never, ever. Wes, who's joining us in the studio today?
We have my beautiful wife, Desiree Weitzenhoffer, and her canine companion. Hopefully we'll stay quiet.
Walt?
Yeah, so Walt's with us. Hopefully he'll chill out and not be too noisy. If the listeners, our viewsters, hear some barking, that'd be Walt.
Yep. And definitely not me.
He's gonna be totally good.
Okay.
He's gonna be a good dog, I'm pretty sure.
We'll see.
I'm willing to bet a lot of View the Right Thing listeners are fans of all creatures great and small, so they probably won't mind if they hear a cute little dog bark once in a while.
I mean, we don't know for sure, though.
But I said I'd bet on it. I'll bet you $1.
If they hate animals,
All of them?
then they can stop listening to this podcast.
Whoa! No.
Wow.
We will take
Wow.
listeners, all listeners. We don't discriminate against listeners.
But if you hate animals, we're going to make you love animals. Because today we're reviewing Milo and Otis and... Oh, no,
Not true.
Not that movie.
And if she keeps it up,
And Babe!
this will be the last episode we feature Desiree Weitzenhoffer.
I'm caught in the middle of a lover's quarrel podcast right now.
Yeah, you're right in between us.
And I like it.
All right.
What do we do on View the Right Thing?
You tell me.
Oh, so View the Right Thing is a show that sort of acts as a book club, but for movies. So today we're going to discuss 2 movies. Then at the end of this episode, we're going to pick 2 new movies. You go out and watch those movies, or watch them in the comfort of your own home, because most of them are on home video. And then in about 2 weeks, we're going to record a new episode where we talk about those 2 movies that you've already seen and you get to enjoy. And there are no spoilers because you've seen it.
Yay, no spoilers because you've seen it.
Woo-hoo.
So today, if you haven't watched Mutiny on the Bounty and Sullivan's Travels, get ready for spoilers.
Yeah. Or pause.
Pause, watch, and come back.
Yeah. And at the end of the episode, we have a special thing that we're going to do for next month. Our 4 films next month are going to be special.
Next month's just December. What's special about December?
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to the end of the episode, maybe.
Okay, let's see.
I'm going to be in suspense for the whole time.
I know. I'm very excited about it.
Winter starts. The fiscal year ends. What else?
Well, let's find out at the end of the episode.
Okay.
Steve.
Yeah?
Let's briefly just go over real quick. Have you seen any movies in the theater? Let's pick
theater.
one. If you've seen more than one, let's pick one film in the theater.
Well, what if I've seen a movie that's in theaters?
But you saw it at home because you are a fancy screener? Okay, you go for it. What's in theaters that you saw?
I just watched Creed last night.
That's the movie that I have on my list.
Yeah, we went and saw that.
What'd you think?
I enjoyed it a lot.
I loved it.
Yeah, I don't really have many complaints at all. Yeah, it was a fun, it's Rocky 7, but it's Adonis Creed 1.
Adonis Johnson Creed.
Do you think they'll make a sequel?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think they probably will.
Well, remember, we'll try to keep it spoiler free since Desiree is a newcomer. I just wanted to put that out before she started spoiling the movie.
Because you know me, I'm always spoiling movies for everybody.
Hey, think about this. Creed. Mm-hmm. Right there.
Oh, on my TV?
Possible. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I'd watch it again.
Whoa, dude!
I thought it was really, really well made. I thought it was very intense, especially the last 20 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a moment where they sort of had like a little bit of a scene break in that last 20 minutes, and I leaned over to Desi and I was like, "That is how you make a movie."
A little bit of a scene break.
Yeah,
I think I know what you're talking about.
We can discuss it later.
I think I know what you're talking about. And I love the very opening scene too. The
kid?
Yeah, like the spot that they chose to start the movie on was a pretty cool
It's interesting because
moment.
we went with our roommate Chris, and one of his complaints was actually some of that stuff at the beginning where he said he felt like we were kind of coming into the middle of a conversation and we didn't get enough background. And I see what he means by that. I kind of liked it.
Yeah, I liked it too. I think I can see what he means, but I also felt like it wasn't entirely necessary.
Yeah.
I felt like it was enough background to get us to the part of the movie we wanted to be watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's hard to talk about without spoiling it.
Man, you guys hear that?
Is there?
Besides Walt, there's an ice cream truck outside, and I bet that's what he is upset about.
Oh, Walt.
Don't be upset about ice cream trucks, Walt.
They have deliciousness inside.
But not for. It's bad for doggies.
Probably.
But.
I feel like I saw something else in theaters. Oh, I finally got around to watching the Star Wars newest trailer because
I still have not.
I'd already seen it inadvertently at Disneyland's Path of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So I finally watched that. I finally watched the Captain America Civil War trailer.
Not watching it.
I just plain caved last night.
I'll watch it in theater.
Enjoyed it thoroughly. Yeah, I was planning to do that, and I was like, I think I'm just going to watch it for free right now at 3 a.m. because I'm jonesing for it, man. Gonna get my Captain Steve Rogers fix, man.
Yeah.
But I liked it a lot. I'm very excited. It looks like it's going to be rather intense.
Yeah.
Midnight Sun makes an appearance in it. The Marvel
Don't talk about it. I don't want to know.
supervillain Midnight Sun.
Spoilers.
I'm kidding. He's not at all. I think Midnight Sun is my go-to joke character. He was in Marvel Comics for maybe 2 issues of something one day. But he's purple, and he flies around in space with discs that are on his hands and feet.
Cool.
And he wears a fedora and a cape.
Well, if he wears a fedora, he's
And then other than that, he's
awesome.
purple nude.
Ooh, oh boy.
I just want to comment that I thought it was really interesting choice in Creed to
Yeah.
put Michael B. Jordan in Nike Michael Jordan branded attire for the entire movie.
They did, didn't they? I didn't even put that together. Oh, that is funny.
I think that's sort of like just more of a comment on the times and sports that we live in. Like everything's branded anyways, right?
Yeah, definitely. I just thought it's funny.
That's very funny.
Why not go Jordans?
Put Michael B. Jordan in all of Michael Jordan's clothing and accessories.
Yeah.
Except for those boxing gloves. I don't think Air Jordan makes boxing gloves.
No.
Probably not.
No.
But like all his like workout clothes.
Yeah. And then, how about the package delivered to the dressing room at the end? Don't talk about it.
Just
but
don't talk
man,
about it.
wasn't that cool?
I was just about to say that there were a couple moments I teared up a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of those moments.
Yeah. Somebody sends him a fleshlight while he's in his dressing room. It's pretty weird, but it's great.
All right. So let's move off of theatrical films. We spent way too much time talking about it, probably.
This is true.
Last episode, we went insane in our pre.
Well, it was pre-Thanksgiving, and we were getting
we had turkey jitters.
Pre-Thanksgiving, pre-turkey jitters, man. When was our last episode?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that reminds me. We're going to have to bump December. We're going to have to tighten it up because I fly out of town on the 21st.
That's all right. I fly out of town on the 20th.
Yep.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, so we'll figure it out.
Listener, you needed to know that.
Yeah.
I blame myself for that divergence there. Divergent? Isn't there a new Divergent movie?
Yeah, it's
in
called
the
Legion,
theaters?
but we don't need to get into that right now.
I'm going to watch that. I'm going to go watch that right after this.
All right. Do you have that? You don't have that screener. That's not an awards
No. I mean, I'm
thing.
just going to go spend my money at the theater.
It's not out yet.
Shailene.
Legion's
I'll find
not
a
yet.
way.
All right.
I'll find a way, Shailene.
So Sullivan's Travels.
Yes.
Let's bust into Sullivan's Travels. One of my favorite films. I like it a lot.
It's a pretty enjoyable flick. Should I mention the coffee countdown right now?
Sure.
I came over to watch Sullivan's Travels. I was on very little sleep, but I was on a whole lot of coffee. But I started dozing off in the first 5 minutes. I don't blame the movie. I blame myself.
You say that every
But it
time,
still
though.
happened.
So I think we need to find a way to get you some more sleep before we watch movies.
I try. Last night I was in bed by 11 p.m., but I was awake till 3. Just laying there. And then about 1, I decided to
over and
watch
sing to you?
TV on my... What?
Need me to come over and sing to you?
I mean, you could probably do it over the phone.
I'll give you nightmares.
It's worth the risk.
All right. So the film opens with a train barreling through the night.
Yeah.
So there's 2 men. They're fighting on top of the train, and they roll, and fight. They end up like rolling off of the train car in between the two train cars.
Oh no!
And they kind of like fight kind of in between train cars and kind of underneath it, and then they clamber back up on top. And one guy gets the drop on the other, and he pulls out a gun and he shoots him.
No!
And the guy that gets shot, the dying man, grabs the man who shot him, and they topple over the edge into a river below. And then the words "the end" come into frame.
But it's only been like 2 minutes.
Yeah, I know. That's credits roll. Shortest podcast ever.
It was amazing. Best movie. Best movie ever.
It turns out that there are 3 men watching a film in a screening room.
All right.
And our man, Sullivan, John L. Sullivan, gets up and he explains sort of the drama and the seriousness of what they just watched. And he's basically trying to convince them that he needs to tell, that the plight of man needs to be realized on film. The true plight of man. Not just this action-y stuff.
And their argument is that you have no idea about the plight of man, John Sullivan.
So he wants to make a film called "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" Which, if that title sounds familiar, it's because the Coen brothers got their title from this film.
Mm-hmm.
Which their film is also about a man on a journey.
You could say that again.
Well, and there's they have some homages from this film, like the kid in the little car, and but the studio executives, they want him to make another comedy. That seems like all he ever gets to make. He made apparently a very famous film called "Ants in Your Plants." I'll repeat that again. "Ants in Your Plants."
I would watch that.
Excellent title.
Yeah. So anyways, he continues to argue for the depiction of the suffering of humanity, and the studio execs, he continues to add, with a little sex in it. Hey, Walt.
Walt loves the little sex idea.
Oh, my goodness.
To which Sullivan agrees. So every time he sort of starts talking about it, the exec is like, with a little sex.
With a little sex.
With a little sex. What I liked about the scene was Sullivan comes off as like very demanding. He definitely seems like a film director. There's an air of he wants what he wants and he's going to get it.
Yeah. Which a director needs to have.
So he's kind of like closed off and demanding, but at the same time he's sort of trying to do something noble, I think.
Sure.
But at the same time, every time they say, "Well, a little sex in it," he agrees. Like it's like, well, of course they're gonna have some sex in it. Yeah,
obviously. He knows that that's what puts the butts in the seats.
So he knows who he is, and but he really does want to make, I think, a moving film. I think he's genuine about that.
Yeah, good old John Sullivan. Is it John Sullivan or George?
John L. Sullivan.
John L. Way Sullivan.
Yeah, L.A. So he's super set on making this film about hardship, and they sort of challenge him and ask him what hardships he's been through, sort of what you alluded to. And one of the execs says that he started out by opening a shooting range.
Opening a shooting
in his early 20s. He was like, "What were you doing in your early 20s?" And he was like, "Well, I was in college." And the other guy, I can't remember what the other guy says. He's like,
they have a lot of really...
I used to walk 20 miles to do this when I was 13. Where were you when you were 13? He was like, I was in boarding school.
Right.
So clearly he's sort of been raised with a silver spoon in his mouth.
Yeah, the one guy says he was selling newspaper on the street till he was 25 and all that.
Yeah.
And then they shortly reveal that they were making it all up after Sullivan leaves the office.
Well, one guy said, "Oh, I did open a shooting range." He's like, "Yeah, but with your father-in-law's money."
Yeah. Open a shooting range. There's an idea.
So essentially he's been poor, and so like what does he know about the plight of the poor, because he's never been poor.
Right.
And he realizes that they're right. So he decides to go to wardrobe, have them fit with essentially hobo wardrobe. That's what they called the homeless back then. And he's going to spend time living among the poor. So he's going to start with ragged clothes and 10 cents in his pocket.
10 cents.
And which is not a lot of money, but it's...
Walt hates it.
It's
10 cents, Walt.
He's staring at us. He decides he's going to do it. They think he's crazy, but he's going to do it anyways. Now that scene where they get up from the screening room, they walk into the office and they have this whole conversation. There's something really interesting about this scene. Do you know what it is?
I was probably asleep. I don't think I was asleep that early, but I was asleep pretty early.
So that was 10 pages of dialogue.
Yeah.
It was scheduled for 2 days of
all
shooting. Right. The cinematographer challenged Preston Sturges, the director.
Yeah.
He's like, "I bet you couldn't do it in a take."
Cool.
So Preston Sturges goes about devising like ways to cut out shots. They ended up shooting that scene in one shot, pretty much. They had to do more than one take because the first take, the camera on the tracks wobbled a little, so they needed a better take of it.
All right.
But they did it all in one shot, and this 2-day ordeal, they were done by 11 a.m. on the first day.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, so by lunchtime they were done. They got to take some time off.
Wow. I might have to look that scene up and do it in an acting class or something because it's a fun conversation.
Yeah, I've heard that it took them about, once they were set up, that it took them about 30 minutes to shoot it, and they were done.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, for 10 pages of dialogue.
Way to go, dudes.
It's interesting too because it's 10 pages of dialogue. It's only like 4.5 minutes long.
Right.
So they really
They're
back
fast
then.
talkers.
Yeah, back then they really just whipped through it. So Sullivan goes home to practice his poor person walk.
Yeah.
And he's like trying on the tattered clothes, different jackets, different hats, that kind of thing. Of course, he has 2 butlers.
Uh-huh.
Sullivan gets a call from his wife, who he only married because of the tax incentive.
Ooh.
And because it's the 15th, she wants her money.
Oh, dang. Mrs. Sullivan.
And she demands $2,400 a month from him. It used to be $1,200, but she ran away with his business manager, who's the one who convinced them to get married in the first place.
Whoa.
And he takes some of the money too, so it's $2,400 instead of $1,200.
He needs to have her murdered.
Whoa,
That's a different movie, though.
Yeah.
That's
Maybe a little
That's
extreme.
double indemnity.
it's double indemnity. So anyway, Sullivan can't stand the woman. They obviously don't live together, and he's just frustrated by the whole situation.
Poor Sullivan.
Now the other butler comes in, Burroughs. I remember getting his name, Burroughs. And he explains that he doesn't like the outfit that Sullivan is wearing, and he says it feels like he doesn't like it when they caricature the poor and the needy.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he thinks it's something for a role. Sullivan explains about the film and what he's going to do for research, and Burroughs delivers this quote that I really liked. I wrote it down. He says, "It's not very interesting because the poor already know about poverty, and only the morbid rich would find the topic glamorous."
Wow. The wisdom of a butler.
Yeah. He basically gives Sullivan the info he needs to discover what's important in this film. So at the beginning of the film, they're a little brave with it, and they kind of give you the moral right at the beginning of the film.
I like that.
So, actor Michael McKean is a filmmaker.
Yeah.
He said of this scene, "You can try tennis, but you can't try starvation."
Who? Ain't that the truth?
Which is essentially what the butler is, what Burroughs is trying to get across to him.
Yeah.
So the executives show up at his house along with a publicity guy, and they tell him that if he's going on the road, they're going to follow along and take photos. But they'll keep a moderate distance, they say. And they're going to do this in a big decked-out bus.
Right.
A land yacht.
Land yacht. It's like tricked out.
That sounds super discreet.
Yeah.
So Sullivan, basically, he reluctantly agrees to do it because he wants to make this movie. For insurance purposes, if he ever needs to back out or for whatever reason, they've sewn an ID card into his shoe. The sole of his shoe. So Sullivan agrees, and they go on the road, and the caravan drives behind him at a snail's pace, about 30 feet behind him.
Yeah. Which would drive me crazy if I were
Super
on that
not
thing.
obvious at all.
Yeah, and it's got the publicity guy, it's got an insurance person, it's got a radio guy to radio back to the studio.
Yeah.
It's got a silly cook in
Kind
there.
of a health spa.
Yeah, a doctor, a
Yep.
journalist, and his assistant with
Yeah.
bloomers.
With the bloomers.
Yeah.
So as he's walking, this kid drives up in this kind of custom, powerful, go-kart thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's the size of a car. I mean, the tires are like real car tires.
Yeah.
But the thing's got the get up and go of a little go-kart. Sounds kind of like a go-kart, too.
Gotta build one of those.
And the kid offers Sullivan a ride, and they speed off. And the bus does its best to keep up. The kid goes over jumps. It goes around tight corners, through puddles, off-road. And the bus just does all the same things. Goes off the same little jumps and things like that. Of course,
it was the precursor to Speed.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Exactly like that.
Along the way, they also attract a cop who ends up having to go through a mud puddle, and before he wipes the mud off, the go-kart and the bus take a turn. So by the time the the cop wipes the mud off of his face,
Yeah.
he goes the wrong direction. So they lose the cop, essentially. So eventually the kid stops in a field near a dirt road, and Sullivan gets out and thanks the kid, and the kid has to go to school. He's on his way to school.
In his car.
In his little car. So Sullivan walks over to the stopped bus. The bus is also stopped in the same field, and everybody kind of like falls out of the bus, and they're all completely disheveled. There's this whole thing with as they're on this journey following this kid, they're falling all over the bus, and the blinds are falling off, and they're getting caught up in things, and the cook's in the kitchen, and everything, like the oven falls open and hits him in the head, and he ends up on top of the sink. His head goes through the roof at one point with his little feet dangling, and his face ends up in the pancake batter at one point. And
delicious.
I thought, that's interesting that they sort of white-faced the black guy. The cook is a black guy. One of the few, like, sort of really black actors that's actually focused on in the film.
Yeah.
And they kind of, like, knocked them all around. I thought that was kind of interesting. Later, there's another scene where a black actor actually gets to speak, and it's actually one of the most poignant scenes of the film. So it's kind of interesting that the film is sort of bookended that way. But
yeah, well, and I feel like, though, that the cook is clearly a comedic actor. Like,
yeah,
it's very slapstick.
He's mugging.
He knows what he's doing. Like, you know.
Yeah.
As long as it was his choice to get knocked all around.
I don't think.
Although I imagine it was in the script too.
So Sullivan tells the people that he's going to go. He's going to keep going, and he's going to go without them following him. If they want to go ahead to Vegas and meet him there in like a week or a month or something, then they can just wait and be happy and not have to worry about following him, and they get photos when he gets there.
I feel like trying to hobo it to Vegas is a real dangerous idea.
I mean,
like through the desert?
Yeah, 4-hour car ride by foot is obviously going to be a lot longer, and through the desert is going to be quite...
I mean, it depends.
And I don't think there's a ton of...
Well, why not San Francisco? Or San Diego?
I think
that's be a shorter trip.
I think they picked Vegas because that was what was the direction they happened to be heading at that moment.
Oh, okay.
Well, and I think like there can't have been much in between LA and Las Vegas back then. Like,
I think you guys are focusing on the wrong thing.
All right.
I'm just saying, it's a bad idea. Kids, if you're going to hobo somewhere, don't hobo to Vegas.
Sure. Don't hobo.
Don't hobo around.
Don't be a transient, kids.
Right.
So he basically tells them if they don't want more hijinks like that, they know what's best. They should go ahead. So they do. So he goes on to this little farmhouse up the road.
Farmhouse.
He does manual labor for this widow and her sister. Not only does the widow make him cut wood, but she makes him get dressed up in her dead husband's clothes.
Ew.
And go to the movies with her.
Oh.
She has an eye on him.
Oh, definitely.
She wants the hookup.
Whoa.
I think that's pretty obvious from the first scene she's in.
She's looking for a little comfort, if you know what I mean.
A little hobo comfort.
So, at the movies, I thought something kind of interesting happens. Because I feel like almost every time I go to the movies, I'm in this situation. It's clear he's never watched a movie with the masses before.
Yeah.
With the general public.
But there is a constant distraction at the movie theater. There's little kids chewing popcorn over his shoulder. There's another child that's like blowing a whistle constantly, just like sort of absent-mindedly. He's got it stuck in his mouth. It's like every time he breathes, it whistles. There's like a hiccuping man two people over from him that's eating peanuts. The widow's sister is unwrapping hard candy and eating that. And it's just like for him, I think a failure of common courtesy. Like this he knows what went into making the film,
right?
And that it's his livelihood. It's what he does for a living, and so it feels a little bit like a disrespect, and people aren't getting the most out of it if there's all these distractions.
Yeah.
So, and I think he's also failing to recognize something. Now, this takes place during the Depression, and there wasn't a lot of things that people could do to A, distract themselves, and B, a lot of things they could do that was affordable, but going to the movies was affordable. And which is why there were so many poor little kids sitting behind him and stuff.
Yep.
You could take a lot of people to the theater for very cheap at the time. And
it happened in 2008 too, when the economy crashed. They said the movie theater ticket sales were climbing because so many people were laid off.
Yeah, I think because the character is well off.
Yeah,
he doesn't, and he probably watches most of his movies through the studio experience.
Yup.
He doesn't understand why, there's all these kids and all these people and sort of unsophisticated people doing this. So
you're learning, aren't you, Sullivan?
So that's just sort of an interesting example. Then we find out exactly how long his night is. There's a sign outside the theater that we see that shows that it's 3 features and a short.
Nice.
So he's probably in that theater for 4 or 5 hours.
At least, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds all right.
I mean, it sounds all right, but he was tortured by the situation. So they go back They go back to the house, and the widow shows him to his room and turns down his bed for him because she sort of insinuates that's woman's work.
Yeah. Well, and this is after she's put her hand on his leg during the movie.
All right.
She's clearly making moves.
So he's essentially living in nice clothes in a nice house with a woman who wants him.
Yeah.
Which is not the experience he was going for.
Nope.
Not only does he not want to have to be obligated to this woman, it's sort of putting him back where he belongs, like in nice clothes in a nice house with women and whatnot. So there's when she's turning down the bed for him, there's a really great gag where the painting of the husband is in the room up on the wall.
All right.
And we see it several times in the scenes prior to this. And then as she's talking to him and sort of flirting with him and turning his bed down, the painting of the husband changes and he's like kind of squinting, like looking with indifference or he's indifferent, and then it goes to like the squinting irritation.
Yeah.
That the picture has.
Like I'm making a move on my wife, eh?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny.
So basically the picture's haunted.
The picture is haunted. So Sullivan tries to get out of the house, but his door is locked from the outside. We see the sister, or the widow and the sister, they lock the door from the hallway.
That is creepy.
So there's an adjoining bathroom that also adjoins to the widow's room. So he goes into the bathroom and tries the door on the opposite side, and the widow is there, and she is clearly waiting for him. She's positioned, she's, quote, reading a book, but she is positioned like sitting up perfectly with her like nightgown on. There's no covers on her, and she's like, holding the book in a way that people wouldn't read a book, and she's clearly got her hair done and her makeup on and stuff.
Yeah, she's very posed.
She's in a frisky mood, that widow.
So he quickly closes the door and he looks for a different way out. So what he does is he ties the bed sheets together and climbs out the window, like old school Hollywood gag. So as he's climbing down, the sheets start to rip, and he falls into a rain barrel and gets completely soaking wet.
He gets his pants caught on a nail on the way down too.
Yeah,
that's no way to fall.
So he thumbs a ride on the road, and a man transporting pigs. Right, he's transporting pigs, I think.
Pig sounds familiar.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I was totally clear what he was transporting.
It sounded like they were pigs, but we never see any of the pigs. So he picks him up, and he's like, you can sleep in the back. I'm not supposed to pick up people. So they drive off. The man wakes him up in the morning, and Sullivan asks him, "Where are we?" And the man tells him, "Hollywood. You made it to Hollywood, kid." He's like, "Maybe you'll see some movie stars or somebody famous." So, kind of exasperated, Sullivan walks into this diner that's kind of next to where they stopped.
Oh, yeah.
And he asks for some coffee and a donut. And there's this beautiful blonde,
Veronica
Lake, standing near a window. And she buys him some ham and eggs, too. And they sit and they talk. First, he kind of refuses, but she insists.
Yep.
And she's a failed actress. She's kind of hard on her luck. She's really dressed up. It's early in the morning, clearly like from a night before kind of situation. And she's upset, and she just can't make it in the industry. She can't get introduced to the right people. She wants to meet this famous director, Lubitsch, who was a real director. He headed Paramount for a long time, and he I think he worked with the director Preston Sturges quite a bit. Preston Sturges was sort of like, I don't know if I want to say Lubitsch was his mentor, but I think kind of Preston Sturges was taken under his wing and had a lot of reverence for him.
All right. Maybe like a Spielberg-Abrams situation.
Yeah, or you could argue maybe like a...
But I won't argue.
Francis Ford Coppola Spielberg kind of mentorship.
I won't argue, though, Wes.
Okay, let's not.
Don't try to bait me into it.
Okay.
Do not!
I'm sorry. So they sit down and talk, and she talks about how she just can't get these introductions and whatever. And she's going to go home. She sort of implies maybe Midwest or East Coast. She doesn't ever really say. At one point she says Chicago is halfway, and I'm thinking Chicago's not where she lived, like in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Chicago's halfway.
Well, it's halfway in quotes.
Yeah. So,
and I guess too, if she were then going to continue traveling north.
Yeah.
I guess.
Maybe
to the
she's
coast
like,
and then north.
Yeah. Maybe she lives on like the farthest northern eastern tip of Maine or something.
Yeah. Okay. So she's convinced she's got to go home, and he kind of goes, I have this friend who's a director.
Yeah.
And he could probably help you out if you want to just like hang out a little bit longer, like tough it out a little bit longer. Maybe in a couple months when he gets back into town, he can help you. She's like, no. And he eventually says, she says she just wants to go home, and he's like, well, maybe I can at least give you a ride to the train station or wherever, in exchange for you buying me this ham and eggs. And she's like, well, how are you gonna give me a ride? He's like, well, my friend, the director, he has a car, so you wait here, and I'll go get the car.
It's kind of like, he won't mind if I borrow it.
Yeah, so...
I feel like he's talking about himself.
Yeah, that's
yes.
very astute. So he goes and gets the car and picks her up, and on the way, they discuss his director friend and his films. Now, she did not like Ants in Your Plants.
No.
Uh-oh.
But she did like one of his other films, and she discusses a scene that she liked, and she quotes the film, and Sullivan seems kind of exasperated by it because they're comedies.
Yeah.
And it's almost like he's embarrassed by them. But the blonde seems to remember the films with a lot of fondness, and she has this big grin on her face when she's thinking back about them. So to show that his films did bring people happiness. Do you, Steve, know what the girl's name is in the film?
Wasn't she credited as just the dame?
The girl. She's
the girl.
The girl.
She has no name.
She has no name.
Wow.
Which is a little bit offensive.
She spends a lot of time on screen in this movie. They gave her no name whatsoever.
Her name is the girl.
And it's funny, too, because I didn't notice that she didn't have a name.
Right.
But until Wes mentioned it, and then I was like, what? Oh, my gosh.
Maybe she is the grandmother of Ed Norton's character in Fight Club.
Maybe.
Who's just the narrator.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, the girl, played by Veronica Lake. You
know,
what is Veronica Lake famous for?
I don't care. What is her most famous big role?
Well, I didn't say role.
Oh.
What is she known for?
She invented... She murdered...
No.
No. She rescued a young baby that grew up to be...
You're wrong, but I want to see where this is going.
Will Smith.
Yes, that is correct. Veronica Lake is known probably the most for her hair.
Oh.
And she
I thought you meant an action. No,
she had this wavy hair thing that kind of went over, like, kind of half over one eye, called the peekaboo curl.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wish I knew how to do that. I wish I knew how to make my hair do that.
It's got to be rollers of some kind, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Rollers roll different directions or something?
Yeah, something like that.
I'm sure it's in a book somewhere.
So she had that hairstyle pretty frequently in film, so she was kind of known for that. And she, it kind of sparked other women to do that in the country, real women.
It was the first Rachel cut.
It was very much like the Rachel cut, right? So all these women were doing it, and then America joined the war.
Yeah.
And all these women had this peekaboo curl, and they were working in factories, riveting things and like helping build airplanes and loading ammunition, and their hair was getting caught in machinery.
Whoops.
So Veronica Lake did another role where she like cut her hair or had it pulled back, which is very, very unusual for her.
Yeah.
And she went about going on like radio shows and things in a campaign to get women to cut their hair and tie their hair back, so that way they could stop getting injured in these factories. She did this real campaign. I thought.
So what you're saying is she's a war hero.
She's a war hero.
She's a war
Way to
hero
go, Veronica Lake.
in the hair department.
Yeah. Hey, it takes all kinds.
I think it's kind of cool. Like she went around to get people to change their hairstyle for safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a necessary. I don't know. It's necessary.
Sure.
They're there.
So they're driving down the street,
Boy, are they.
and the police roll up on them with sirens on,
Yeah.
trying to catch them red and dirty. So the next thing we know, they're in jail, and the butlers show up to get Sullivan out, and the police are like really skeptical, but they confirm that it's him, and so they let him out, and he says, "Let the girl out. She's getting bored." And so they let the girl out, and they get in the limo, and she's
That's all it takes to get a girl out of jail? Let her out, she's getting bored?
Well, I think now that they're sure that this was his car to begin with, it wasn't stolen. She didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
Okay, I guess that's a good point.
So, well, yes, she didn't do anything wrong. He was driving without a license.
Oh, Sullivan.
Right.
So they get the girl out, and they end up in the limo, and she's like, "Hey, is this your director friend's car?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm the director." And so they go back to his house. He's going to give her some ham and eggs to repay her.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we see the ham and eggs cooking up. Nice ham. Got a little bone in it.
That kind.
And he
Yeah, okay.
takes her on a tour of this house. And this house is big.
It is massive.
It's
beautiful.
like the house from Sunset Boulevard, but without all the scary stuff.
Yeah, without
Yeah,
all the
it's-
darkness and cobwebs.
It's very well maintained.
Yeah.
Walt doesn't like the scary cobwebs.
Walt.
So she's like, "Well, where's the pool?" So
isn't.
as he's showing her the place, she's sort of starting to get a little irritated.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, where's the pool? A place like this must have a pool." And he's like, "Oh, it's right out here." Completely oblivious to the fact that she's getting irritated.
She's being sort of sarcastic. Like,
Yeah. So he shows
Darn
her
it,
the
the
pool,
girl.
and she just pushes him in. She's like, "Take a drink," and she's upset because as bad as she's had it,
Yeah.
she thought that she could raise her spirits by doing something nice for someone else and someone less fortunate than her. She's like, I'm gonna go home. I'm a failure, but there's somebody at least that's worse off than me, so I'm gonna try and give them a hand up. And by bringing her to his house, he basically takes that away from her.
yeah, he's a big fat faker.
But he's also in a position to completely make her career. So in a way, she did right by choosing
It's interesting
to
though
help
because
somebody less
she
fortunate.
still insists to move on. She doesn't. She's done.
Well, I can't speak for that.
So Sullivan pulls her in, so she gets wet too. And then later they
yeah.
have breakfast, and she brushes her hair, and she tries to convince him that she should go along with him, and that she'll follow him. And of course, he hates the idea. Now I want to talk about this scene.
Boy, does she brush her hair.
Yeah. So I went back and watched it,
Yeah.
and I noticed something in the film. I pointed it out to.
She's nude while she brushes her hair.
I backed,
No,
I backed
think
it up.
you would have noticed that, Steve.
I backed it up and watched it a third time, specifically so I could show Desi, because I was like, not quite flabbergasted by it, but I thought it was so interesting what they did in this scene.
What?
It seems very forward.
You
for
could
the
totally
time
miss it.
when this movie is made.
So first off, she's got her legs bare, which is a big deal back then. That was like as close as you were going to get to nudity in a film.
Right.
So she has her legs bare, and she's like sitting on the back of this chair, and she's holding the brush. She brushes her hair for a little bit, and then she just holds it in front of her,
Hi-oh.
in her lap, straight up, and she begins to stroke the brush.
Google image searching this right
very
now.
suggestively.
Very suggestively.
Very suggestively.
Absolutely intentionally.
I'm listening.
So she's basically seducing him, right? Because she wants to go with him. And so she moves around as she's trying to convince him to behind him.
Uh-oh.
Well, at first she's kind of like next to him, and she does the brush stroking thing again, very close to him.
Like, just like the brush is at his eye level. Like, she's standing and he's sitting.
And she's stroking this hairbrush. And then she moves behind him and puts her arms on his shoulders and kind of leans in. And then she sits on his lap.
Hey, now.
And uses the brush to play with his hair.
All
Get all
right.
playful. And meanwhile, the butlers are like watching off to the side, like, "Oh, hey."
The butlers are watching.
Well,
Yeah, the
and I
butlers
think
are standing off to the side.
they're all kind of like giddy. Like maybe he'll just stay home now. Like this whole thing is
Or take her with him.
stupid.
Right.
because she's sort of fighting him. Once she gets on his lap, they really kind of get into this like sort of playful fight, and so Burroughs comes over and he suggests that he thinks it might be a good idea to bring her with him. And
I like the idea.
Sullivan refuses, and she starts doing this like playful, like, I'm fighting, I'm kicking you, and her legs are flailing up and down in the air on his lap, and so he's like, "Hey Burroughs, get her legs," and, like, they're gonna like pick her up and take her off of him, and so Burroughs grabs her legs. Sullivan stands up, which sends Burroughs back toward the pool, pulling both him and the girl into the pool.
Nice.
Now the other butler comes over to try to help Burroughs out of the pool, and of course when Burroughs reaches up, he pulls the other butler in by accident.
I don't think it was by accident. I feel like he kind of was like, we're all in the pool now, it's funny, I'm going to pull you in too.
To me, I thought that on the initial watching, to me it looks like that he's trying to get out, but instead of letting the guy pull him up, he pulls also at the same time.
Yeah.
And so it pulls the other guy in. So a little later, the two butlers are drying off, and Burroughs makes a phone call. And he talks to this man who runs a newsstand at a train station, and he's asking, where's the best place for a transient to jump onto to a moving train?
Oh, yeah.
And the newsman's like, wise guy, eh? And hangs up on him. Calls him a wise guy. Thought that was cool.
Burroughs is a wise guy.
So the other butler makes...
The guy who looks like he must be Jack Lemmon's dad?
Yeah, he does look like Jack Lemmon. He makes a call to a rail yard and approaches the conversation differently, and the man on the other end gives him the info that he needs. Basically says that they can't get on the train on train yard property. Train yard property. So what they do is the dog's growling at the trains.
Don't get on the train.
So what happens is all of the hobos wait just on the other edge of the line,
right,
for the train yard. And when we see that later, there's actually a sign when they're looking at the train. There's actually a sign that says train yard property end or something like that.
Yeah, it's a convenient sign. Helps the hobos know where they can and can't get off.
And I think
they'd be trespassing if they went past that line,
right? Although technically they're trespassing anywhere on the railroad tracks. Believe me, I've been busted for it plenty of times.
Hoboing?
Well, just playing around on railroad tracks as a kid. We'd get in big trouble.
Well, and I think maybe at this time, probably the railroad knows that there are a lot of transients. They probably can't do a lot about it.
Yeah.
So they're at least going to say, don't come on the property.
Ernest Borgnine did a lot about it in the old Emperor of the North.
Yeah.
With his club and their skulls.
Okay.
You've seen Emperor of the North, haven't you?
Not seen Emperor of the North.
No.
Guy clubs hobo skulls for a hobby.
Okay. Moving on. So Sullivan and the girl get driven out to the rail yard in their fancy car, and they get out of the car, and of course Burroughs sort of objects one more time, and then they walk from the car, this really nice car, in their tattered clothes. Of course, the girl has tattered clothes now, and her hair's pulled back. She's sort of trying to look like a boy. They think it might be safer if she tries to look like a boy.
Yeah, except she's got a crap load of lipstick and mascara on.
Yeah, I mean, she's still Veronica Lake.
Right.
So they walk up.
Sexy boy you brought with you, Sullivan.
Well, and I think Sullivan kind of makes a comment to that effect, too. Like, nobody's going to believe that you're a boy.
But I think the thought is, and especially when they walk up, it's all men. Yeah. So I think they think that, and this kind of comes up again later, that all hobos or all poor people are men. Right? That they have this sort of view in their head of what a hobo is, and it's what Sullivan is caricaturing without trying to caricature it.
Yeah,
that's their view of what a poor person is. So they walk from this really nice car to this large group of men who don't have the fortune to get out of a nice car.
Yeah,
and pretend to be poor.
And I feel like some of them are looking at him like
looking at him extremely skeptically. Yeah, like what's going on here? So they're all waiting for the train. The train starts to take off, starts to move. And,
what does a train do? I guess just go.
Departs. The train departs. So the
chug-a-lugs.
The train starts to approach the men, and the men begin to jump on him, just like this mass exodus of men leaving the train yard to get on the train. And all the men seem to jump on with mostly no problem. Eventually, Sullivan and the girl find a train car that two other men have previously jumped into, and it's full of hay. And he helps the girl get into the car with much difficulty, and then he tries to get in, and she has to help him get in. He has a really hard time with it too, and the other two homeless guys are just like watching it, kind of going, "What is going on here?
Right?
What is this?"
I think they joke about how new they must be, right?
Yeah,
they make a crack about that.
Yeah, they do. They get in and they lean up against the wall across from the men, and they sort of make some jokes, and they ask the men how things are going. Where are we off to? And the men just kind of get up, leave the car, and move to a different car via the outside. Like they're holding on to the boards outside of the train car.
Oh yeah,
and just kind of shuffling along the edge, which is probably really dangerous. But that's how badly they don't want to be with these two people.
They would rather risk life and limb.
Yeah. So the girl starts asking all these questions and about where they're going and what they're going to do and just stuff.
Yeah.
And it starts to irritate Sullivan. And he sneezes because he's allergic to the hay, or he's got a cold. He's getting a cold, is what we later find out. But a little later into the ride, it's nighttime and it's cold and it's dark and they can't sleep, and they're both stuffed up from the hay and that they're sitting in, and they have sort of a moment for probably the first time since the diner. For sure. Well, I guess they kind of have a moment at the pool, but this is probably their real meaningful moment. And she sort of explains to him why he's better off having a girl with him, and he sort of tries to resist her logic, but she knows that he's weakening, because when he sort of like tries to turn away or whatever, she just smiles at him.
Ooh.
So they wake up in the morning, and the girl is hungry. There's somebody outside.
Walt,
I know.
Walt, you're being a real bad viewster right now.
Hey, Des, pick him up. Oh, he's so angry. He's so angry.
I've got 2 microphones now.
Oh, no. Don't give Steve the extra microphone.
I've got 2 microphones. I'm an unstoppable force. All I need now is Wes's 3rd microphone.
It's not happening, man.
And I will rule the
happening.
show.
All right, so they wake up in the morning, and the girl is hungry. She is really hungry.
Should I turn this one off?
Sure. So, Sullivan's like, what do you think? Like, what do you think hobos do when they need to eat? Like, what do you think they eat? And she goes out like to explain how they cook over fires, and they have corn on the cob with melted butter. And she, again, this sort of caricature of what people thought hobos were like. And of course, the description isn't doing me any good because it makes Sullivan hungry as well. He tells her to shut up, and as he gripes at her, she like gives this little sniffle, and she pouts, and she just goes, "I'm hungry."
Oh, Veronica.
So Sullivan gets up to look out of the door, and he sees a town ahead, and
it's the town that hates hobos.
It's the town that dreaded hobos.
No, that's the worst town to go to in this situation.
Yeah.
So, she does this little thing that I thought was kind of cute, where she does sort of like the finger toothbrush on her teeth. She kind of wipes the grime off of her, off of her teeth, and then she takes her fingers that she has the saliva, and she straightens her eyebrows. Like, she makes herself presentable. Even as a hobo, the girl is going to make herself presentable before she starts moving.
All right.
So he sees this little town. She comes up to him and she says, "What town is it?" And he says, "I don't know, probably Hollywood." which is one of my favorite lines of the entire movie. I thought that was really funny. So
he just can't get away.
So the girl points out that there's a lunch stand, so they decide they're going to hop off the train. So Sullivan goes first, and he runs along the train, and she has a hard time like committing to jumping. Figuring out how to do it. Eventually, he's kind of like, "I can't run forever," so she jumps out into his arms, and they go kind of crashing into a bale of hay. It's
good thing that was there.
Yeah.
Well, it was a bunch of bales of hay, so it was like a farm. But it was interesting because when we first see Veronica Lake, she's just very glamorous, right? And very tall and beautiful and stuff. And when we see her at the pool, she's got these long legs out and stuff. When she's in this little outfit, doesn't she seem like a child?
She's a very small person.
Yeah, like, she doesn't seem tall and glamorous. Like, obviously, she doesn't seem glamorous because she's wearing tattered clothes, but
no high heels.
Yeah, she seems very, very short.
No long flowing dress.
Standing next to John, and like in the door of the train car, I just remember thinking, man, she is So short.
I looked it up. She was 3'8".
No.
Don't believe me if you don't want to believe me.
She
wasn't 3'8".
She was not 3'8". Yeah, correct. I think maybe it speaks to the transition that they go through throughout the film. She's gonna go through, and Desi's stomach is growling.
That is the dog. That is not my stomach.
So she's gonna go through more of a transformation faster, I think, than him, and we're gonna see that again here shortly in a few scenes. But so they crash into the bale of hay. They get up, and there's a little diner, and they go inside to sit down for a cup of coffee each, which will cost them 10 cents total.
Delicious.
And the man behind the counter gives them the sort of a suspicious eye. Now there's this big display of donuts sitting directly in front of the girl, and she eyes these donuts and licks her lips and stuff. It's very kind of cartoony and silly. And Sullivan reaches down into his pockets, and then he remembers he must have spent it. I'm guessing. I would have thought he would have spent it at the first diner. They never really suggest where he spends that money.
He says it because, I mean, they've gone back to his house and stuff by then. I think he says it must have fallen out of his pocket in the train car.
So she gets super sad and just looks down at these donuts. The diner man who was bringing them coffee had stopped in his tracks when he saw that they didn't have any money. But then he continues, sets the coffee down, and gives them each a donut. Mm-hmm. And he says, I'm never going to make a dime.
Aww. I think he says, I'm never going to be rich.
I thought he said, I'm never going to make any money. And then Sullivan says, you're richer than you know. Maybe he says, I'm not going to be rich. The point is, the sentiment is, he's not going to make any money. And so Sullivan gives him sort of a little mini speech about how rich he truly is, and that he'll never forget this kindness. And he asks the man where they are, and he tells them,
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. So he asks if he's seen this big land yacht, and he's like, "Oh, you mean this thing out there?" And he gestures out the window.
Yeah,
there's the bus.
There's the bus.
It's right out back.
So that's pretty much the end of that scene. Because the next thing we see is them inside the bus. But
there's a huge montage at that point of just land yacht life.
Well, we have a couple scenes before that, but I liked that they sort of compared. That there's this sort of small comparison. Vegas is not a place that's known for kindness and generosity,
right?
And
Sin City, baby.
There's no place else I can think of that sort of the symbol is greed.
Right, it's a wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Right. So I think out in the desert. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of an interesting comparison that this guy in the biggest city known for greed was super generous to them and sort of, I think, reminds them that there's good people out there.
I like it.
So inside the bus, they're sitting down for a larger breakfast, and the girl is just piling on pancakes and pouring syrup and stuffing her mouth. And Sullivan is getting grilled by the doctor, and the doctor shoves a thermometer into his mouth and says, "You gotta go to bed." So he forces him in the bed and gives him a shot for his cold. And Sullivan explains that they've got to get back on the road because they're going to go to Kansas City. And the doctor says, "We're going to drive to Kansas City. We'll let you out just before we get there." And
he's two days minimum, I think he says, in bed.
That'd be wonderful.
Before they take off, the doctor jumps out of the bus to give the diner man $100 per Sullivan's instruction without explaining who it's from or why. And so basically for this small kindness that this guy did, he got the equivalent of selling 2,000 cups of coffee.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
So the girl...
I guess so.
The girl showers up, and the journalist assistant comes in to bring her something, and, there's Veronica all lathered up in the shower.
More about the shower, please.
So she gets dressed up and puts her makeup on. She does the whole eyebrow thing and straightens, makes sure her eyebrows are sleeked, and she makes herself very presentable.
Yeah, and
she spends they make a point there's no dialogue. They make a point of showing her, getting herself ready, straightening her dress, making sure she's perfect before she goes to see Sullivan, because now we know how she feels about him.
Right. And there's kind of a moment between the two women when the secretary comes in and she's like, I'm going to take care of you. Like, I know that the rest of these guys have no idea what you need. She's like, there's makeup in the medicine cabinet. I brought you a wrap. Like,
oh, yeah, because the secretary's kind of the only woman.
She's the only other woman
on the land yacht.
She's really the only other woman connected to the studio in any way.
Right.
Whoa.
We see the operators later at the end of the film, but that's...
Yeah.
So she gets herself all presentable, and she goes in to see Sullivan, and he's, he's kind of getting down on himself and sort of like, he sort of brings up this idea that we sort of alluded to before, that maybe destiny puts you where you're supposed to be, and I'm just not supposed to be doing this. Multiple times I've ended up back in Hollywood. I keep getting back to where I started, and here I am again with the studio. So maybe I'm not supposed to do this. And she sort of talks him out of that, like talks him back up.
Yeah.
And there's this idea that the universe puts you where you belong, and I think, for the sake of that is kind of true. What's going on right here is that the universe has put these two people together. Sure
has. Didn't give her a name, but it put them together.
Yeah. So they get off the bus. They make their way hand in hand through a field of encampments.
Yeah. A good old Hooverville, they would call those things.
I was trying to remember what the term was for. I couldn't remember. So
President Hoover made a ville. That's never a song that ever was recorded.
So they go through this field of encampments, this Hooverville, and there's all these shacks and huts and fire pits with homeless people everywhere, and they're surrounded. And it's now it's now that they realize that there's this epidemic that's hit the country that they just have never really seen. They've heard about it and they've visualized it in their heads, but never like this.
And that it's not all men.
It's not all men, and that's where I was going to go with this. That's a good point.
That there are wives and mothers
babies
and kids, and it's not just men.
And did you notice that the girl's outfit has changed?
No, what did it change into?
She changed into a woman's outfit.
Oh,
so she's no longer looking like a boy, and she has a completely different kind of hat on. And it's when this outfit change happens is when they realize that there's all of these wives and women that are homeless too. And so now she looks less comical and more normal. I guess. That's kind of where the movie sort of really starts to take more of a serious turn. So then we see them move slowly through a bread line while a photographer is like sitting up in a telephone pole taking pictures of them. But they don't really seem to notice. They never show them notice the photographer. They're kind of in this other world now, and they can't help but just take it all in. They're just completely surrounded and inundated by it. So then later they're sitting against it's kind of like a montage.
Yeah.
They're sitting against pieces of an old couch on the ground, and Sullivan starts freaking out. He's got all these bugs crawling through his clothes. And the girl thinks it's funny, of course. And then all of a sudden she realizes that there are bugs in her clothes too. And so she starts shimmying around. And they end up in kind of a communal shower to get the bugs off. Get rid of the bed bugs.
Like a shower house.
Yeah, like a shower house thing. There's like some... They show all the men showering and stuff, and then they cut to the shot of the women showering in their stalls, and there's like kind of this woman who is overseeing the whole thing.
A shower boss?
Yeah, kind of
shower boss.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like it's not just like a place where they go and shower. There's like somebody walking around and making them use certain kinds of soap. Like here's the stuff you need, and
I guess
when the girl lathers up and then starts to hit herself with the water, she has this feeling of disgust. She has this look of terror and
she's never been told how to shower before.
And I think it's like the realization is hitting her, and that's sort of where I was going with the whole I think she transforms faster than him. Her clothing changes, and she gets this realization that there's people like her out there, and she's in this situation that she never thought she would be in, where she's showering with all these other women, and there's some big woman in a dress walking around observing everything. And
I think it becomes more evident to them that it's not just about not having money or a roof over your head. It's about not having dignity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In some situations,
No privacy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they attend a church service where we presume they're preached about greed. Preached to about greed because the preacher does this like sort of like scheming Snidely Whiplash kind of caricature on stage. It's just to music, so we don't hear it, but he kind of rubs his hands together like kind of like a greedy cartoon character.
Yeah.
And the place is completely packed. It's crowded, and all these people, all these homeless people are in there. There's some, I believe, non-homeless people in there, people that are in like nicer outfits and stuff. They sit more toward the aisles of the church, whereas the homeless people sit towards the edges, which is where the camera is anyways.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot of them are just sort of like taking the opportunity to sleep. The girl is sleeping on his shoulder,
Waiting on that wafer at the end.
yeah. Well, then they get fed. They go and they sit in this big dining hall where all these people are eating, and there's this kind of older man sitting across from them, just chowing down on his food, just like voraciously, like he appreciates his food. And Sullivan and the girl are kind of just picking at their food. Sullivan takes a bite, and she watches him eat it, and he's just like, "This is terrible." And you just see it on his face, and she kind of laughs. And then they look back over across at the guy, and the other guy is like, he doesn't have a problem with the food.
Right.
It's food. So after dinner, they head into this room, and it's completely covered. The entire floor is completely covered with sleeping people. It's like hardly any room to walk, but they kind of tiptoe around bodies, and they find a little spot, and they lay down next to each other, and he holds on to her. And arms are like flailing over on top of them, and people are sleeping with their mouths open in their faces. And
It's an orgy of sleep.
yeah, I mean, it's
They're
it's bad.
piled. They're
And
piled on
yeah.
top of each other.
And
Like
there's
kittens.
There's one guy near him that has
Walt hates this sleep story.
he no, Walt. So there's a guy near them that has just tattered shoes.
Yeah.
When I say tattered shoes, you can completely see his feet through the shoes.
Yeah.
Like his toes and stuff. And
Like the
super
seams
dirty
are
and stuff.
split open.
Yeah.
And
So they
Walt.
eventually do fall asleep. What's that?
Walt is a terrible guest.
He's a terrible guest. This is the last time we're having Walt on.
Walt, you're a bad viewster, but you're a wonderful friend.
It's true.
So in the morning, they get roused up. So this guy comes in and beats a ladle on a pan to wake everybody up. So that's the best way to wake up in the morning, right?
Oh, heck yeah.
And
Next to Billy Club inside a metal garbage can going around. and
exactly. So they wake up, and Sullivan sees that he's barefoot. His shoes have been stolen during the night.
No.
So he puts on the tattered shoes that were there. That's the guy who stole his stuff.
But it's not a big problem. I mean, so what? He lost his shoes. Big deal, right?
We'll find out.
Wrong.
So to make a little bit of money, Sullivan wears a sandwich board for a tailor named Mo.
Aw.
And in turn, to earn money, the girl follows behind him with a sign from the Pants Maker Union calling for a boycott on Mo. And then that night, Sullivan and the girl walk along this like picturesque lakefront. It's beautiful. Super, super beautiful.
Sorry, I got distracted by the dog, but I wanted to say something about the scene where they're eating.
Uh-huh.
I feel like the difference in the way that they see their food and the way that the actual homeless people see their food is kind of speaks to the fact that even though they're seeing and sort of experiencing this lifestyle, they know in their head that they can go back at any time.
And that's
Like,
important.
Yeah, they're not desperate
Yeah.
like these people are.
Yep. That's especially important for John Sullivan.
Right.
So anyway, so they go and they're walking at night along this waterfront, this beautiful lake, and it's a great shot. And
A Veronica Lake.
and as they walk, it's very subtle and very easy to miss. There are 2 feet hanging from the top of the screen in the trees, and it would be something that you could easily miss if you weren't paying attention.
Were they wearing Sullivan's shoes?
They were not wearing Sullivan's shoes.
Oh, okay.
And I think the idea behind it is this is another person that was hard on their luck. Another one of these homeless people, and he gave up and killed himself.
Oh, you think he was hanged?
Yeah, I think he's hanging from the tree.
Oh, I thought it was just somebody sitting on a high branch.
No, I don't think so.
Gross.
Yeah, I think they never really address it, and they don't really show it. They literally just walk by it, and I think the idea is that there's all this this beauty and stuff that you can take in, but these 2 people are now in the knee deep in this journey
Yeah.
of of poverty, and regardless of all the beautiful things that they're not even looking at the lake.
Yeah.
Regardless of all these beautiful things, there's this serious problem, and it's killing people, and I think that's the reference to the feet hanging there.
Wowzers! I thought it was just a happy tree climber.
I don't think so.
Riding high. No, you think corpse on a noose, huh?
I mean, they don't look up and wave to it or anything, you know. So
I mean, they don't even see it.
they don't acknowledge it at all. They don't acknowledge it at all. It's not like somebody that shouts, "Hey, how's it going, buddy?"
Right.
You know, they just
Look how high I am.
yeah, they just move on, and they don't look at like I said, they don't look at the lake, they don't look at the moon.
Wow.
They just walk, realizing the situation that they're in. Because once he's walking in those shoes, so we talked about her transformation with the clothes. This is his transformation with the clothes.
Yeah.
You know, he's beginning to lose his comfort, whether it's the bugs or the shoes or the food. We're seeing John start to lose these things. And we know that she's already started to lose these things.
Yeah.
She's been losing since before the movie started.
This is true.
So
She lost her name.
She was also always closer to poverty than he was.
Yeah.
So they continue on. They start looking through garbage, and they open up a garbage can, and they're poking around with sticks and stuff. And they open up this can, and they see something that makes them just practically sick. And that's when Sullivan decides he can't put this girl through this anymore, and he doesn't want to deal with it. So they turn around and run down the street, and we see that they basically go back to a hotel. They meet up with the caravan,
Yeah. The land yacht.
the land yacht.
Land yacht crew.
And they go to the hotel and they wash up, and Sullivan's in bed, and the girl again gets all dolled up for him essentially, and then comes in and sits down next to him in the bed, and they're definitely in love at this point.
Yeah.
They've gone through a lot together, and that's when Sullivan explains to her that she says, "You want to continue this journey together, right? Like you want to." You know, I could go home, but I thought maybe you'd want to stay together. And he's like, yeah. He then has to explain that he's still married.
And she's like, what?
And he can't, and it's a marriage of convenience and stuff. And he can't get out of it because the wife won't give him a divorce.
That
Because she wants to keep getting paid.
capital B.
Yeah.
Right. He basically says you can't have a divorce without collusion. Like,
Yeah.
if she doesn't agree to it, then he's not getting a divorce.
Again, he should have paid to have her murdered.
So, but they're going to go back together. Like he says, get 2 plane tickets. We're going back.
Nice.
So Sullivan goes back out in his tramp clothes with a stack of $5 bills, a big stack of $5 bills.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to give these out to as many people as he can. Do you remember how much they gave him in $5 bills?
I think he says $1,000.
$1,000 is what I
Holy
thought too.
shnikes.
Yeah, he has a
That's
big
a
stack of
lot
$5
of money.
bills. So people are mostly shocked and happy. Little kids and women and men and stuff are pretty happy, but they're shocked as well, for the most part. But there's one homeless guy that seems to be in slightly nicer shoes than everyone else.
Oh, yeah.
And he seems to feel the greed, and so he follows Sullivan. He ambushes him, knocks him unconscious, drags him and stashes his body into a train car, and he steals the money. But as he makes his getaway, the man trips, and while he's collecting the money that he just dropped off the railway, a train comes by and hits him and kills him.
Serves him right.
So, of course, Sullivan doesn't return because he's knocked out inside a train car.
Yeah.
So the studio sends people out to look for him. They check the hospital. They check the police station. They go to the morgue. And there's a body in the morgue, but it's so destroyed that you can't tell who it is.
Wouldn't it be all chopped to pieces by the train wheels?
Well, it depends on if he went under the train or if he was hit and thrown. But
Well, it also seems like he's at an interchange of the train
yeah, he didn't know which way to
tracks.
go.
So I'm sure it was messy.
Oh,
So-
grody.
They say, go check. Well, did John have any identification? And the girl says, well, he had ID sewn into his shoe.
Into his shoe.
So they say, go check the shoe. And so the guy goes, and then he comes back and sort of like this wait. And then, yep, we see the ID card, John L. Sullivan. And so they decide that John is dead. So
No.
Sullivan wakes up in a train yard, and he deliriously gets in this sort of fight with a train yard guy.
Yeah, a rail I don't know what those guys are
attendant of some
called.
kind.
A rail brute.
So he gets arrested. And
Yeah, I kind of felt like it was that guy's job to like chase
Hobos
tramps
out.
out of the train.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Like-
remember, they're not supposed to be on the rail yard. They're supposed to
Right.
get out before the rail yard, and they're supposed to get on after the rail yard.
Right.
He was some sort of hired thug.
So he gets arrested, and he's sort of made an example of.
Well,
He's all delirious, right? They don't know who he is.
yeah, but he doesn't get arrested just for being in the train yard.
He gets arrested for fighting with the guy.
Right.
That's what I said.
Oh, sorry.
So they make an example of him, and they send him to a prison work camp for 6 years.
6 years.
It's a long time.
Well,
for getting
like all the way through the trial. Like I don't know how fast he gets to this trial, but he still can't even remember his name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has no ID. He doesn't remember who he is. They don't know who he is.
Oh man.
And they show in the trial he's kind of like foggy. Like
Yeah.
you kind of see from his perspective, and he's kind of foggy. I get the feeling that it's like an overnight kind of thing. They just
Yeah,
sent
it seems
him
like it's very soon.
So while he's in the work camp, the Hollywood group mourns him. They have a funeral, and they tell his wife and all this stuff. And when he gets to the work camp, he just wants to like tell somebody who he really is. That you got to understand, this is who I really am. They don't believe him, and the guy who runs the work camp, he's kind of a hard ass. And,
Yeah.
Kind of is maybe a little.
and
bit of
he's
an
like no
understatement.
privileges for him, while he's new and mouthing off and all this stuff. And so he's, Sullivan's beaten, and he's put in a sweat box just for trying to find his way out of the mess, like reading a newspaper or whatever. They won't let him write a letter. They won't let him make a phone call. So eventually, the prisoners get to go to a movie night.
Oh yeah.
So they take the prisoners to this small black church for the movie night. And it's kind of a cool sequence because it's really the only other time you really see a black person speak in the film.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's eloquent.
Boy,
and
does he speak!
he does speak. Yes. And he talks about inclusion,
Yeah.
which is interesting, especially for that time period. Either the time period that the movie takes place or the time period the movie was filmed.
Right.
He talks about inclusion and acceptance and how we're not going to move away from these people. We're not going to look at them funny. We're going to accept them and let them watch the movie with us.
And he says to clear the front rows for these people.
The front 3 rows.
Right.
And so they bring the prisoners in. They're singing Let My People Go,
Oh yeah.
which I thought was a strange song choice for prisoners in chains coming in. I mean, I know it's about slaves, but these men aren't
Still.
slaves. They're criminals.
Yeah.
Which is a little different. Very different.
But now
Yeah.
they're being used as slaves.
They
you
are.
know?
They are. That's true.
And I also feel like it's kind of like they're saying these people are our people. They're not
Sure.
black
That's a good point.
all necessarily, but they're downtrodden and they're
He does say, he reminds them, he who has no sin cast the first stone.
right.
Yeah.
Like, so sort of kind of along what you're saying, I think.
I always thought the lyrics to that song were "Let My Cameron Go."
It's a different movie.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure.
We'll see.
So this scene actually ended up being my favorite scene when they come in and they watch the movie, because it's the aha moment of the
Yeah.
film, which
Yeah,
I love.
It's like he finally gets it.
Yeah. So the movie starts playing, and it's this Disney cartoon with
Ferris
Pluto.
Bueller's Day Off.
No, it's got Pluto.
Oh.
And everyone starts
Animated,
laughing uncontrollably. I guess they originally tried to get a Chaplin film.
Oh, yeah?
And Chaplin wouldn't give them the rights to it. So
What?
They got this Disney Pluto film.
Chaplin.
And so everyone starts laughing uncontrollably, and then you slowly start to see Sullivan start laughing, and he looks over at the guy next to him. He's like, "Am I laughing?" And then he starts laughing again, and he begins to find the humor in what they're watching, and he sort of has this respite from the prison stuff. So a little bit later, they're working and they're on a lunch break, and there's sort of this confidant he has, sort of a guy that is sort of the bridge between the prisoners and the boss,
Yeah.
the work boss. He's sort of like a lackey, but he's also a prisoner. He's kind of an older man, probably like a guy who's serving a life sentence.
Yeah.
He's probably been there a while.
Yeah,
With his
Worked his way
weird
into
hat.
favor.
yeah. And so this is sort of his confidant. He's like, I've got to find a way to get my picture in the paper. And so that the guy tells him, the confidant tells him that you'd have to win something or you'd have to kill someone.
Oh.
And so Sullivan gets this idea, and so he grabs him. He's going to go see the boss. And so they run out to the boss, and he says, I want to confess to the murder of John L. Sullivan.
Himself.
The film director. And so he does. He gets his picture in the paper. So back in Hollywood, the girl is on set. There's a moment a little bit before that I kind of glossed over, where when we're seeing the funeral process and all that stuff, how Hollywood is dealing with the loss of him. The girl is just sitting there all in black, and she's crying, and the executives are there, and they tell her, "We're going to take care of you."
Okay,
that's what
you were his last discovery. Yeah.
You were his last discovery. You're John's last gift to the world, and so. When we see this moment where she's reading the newspaper in Hollywood, she's on set, going to be in a movie.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, his wife at the gravesite was smacking the flowers around and what an inconvenience.
Yeah, I've got to go through this process.
Ugh, yeah.
So
she's a
in the background,
jerk. Yeah.
In the background of this movie set scene is director Preston Sturgis is playing the director that the show that the girl's going to be in. And she sees the photo in the paper with the thing about the guy confessing to the murder, and she gets really excited, and we hear this kind of funny whistle thing when she throws her arms up in the air, and she gets up in her little outfit, and she runs through the studio, knocks some Native American themed guys over in the back lot.
Knocks quite a few people over.
She's wearing sort of a frontier girl outfit.
Yeah.
So this idea that
skirt.
Something about her knocking specifically to in between two Native Americans and knocking them over was very funny to me. And she falls down multiple times on her way. She's kind of klutzy, and
also her outfit is a little bit ridiculous.
It's a little ridiculous. Well, there's a reason behind that. We'll get to that in a minute.
It's short in the front, so you can see all of her bloomers.
Yeah. So
that is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting. Well, the reason we see all of her bloomers is because she's holding the front of her dress up so she doesn't trip on it. I believe.
No, it's cut short in the front.
I watched it again today, and she definitely is holding on to the front of her dress. But there's a reason. There's a reason that it is cut a little bit funny. The waist is higher than it should be on the dress, and I'll get to that in a minute. But she's definitely holding on to the dress as she runs.
Okay.
And she keeps tripping, and she runs into the office and shows in the paper, and everybody starts cheering, and they call all of the publicity people in, and the secretary comes in, and they start making phone calls. That's when we see all the operators making all the calls, connecting all the calls.
Oh yeah.
And so we know that Sullivan's going to be safe, and he's going to get to come home. So let's address the outfit thing.
The outfit thing.
Yeah.
Did you know, Steve, that Veronica Lake was between 6 and 8 months pregnant during the filming of this movie?
Oh, that'll explain a lot.
So
now.
Somewhere in that area, maybe about 7 months pregnant. So
they were camouflaging her tummers.
They were camouflage. So everything she wears in it has a high waist, and it's all a little bit loose, and goofy clothes.
Veronica Lake. I wonder who her baby grew up to be.
But
I don't know.
The only person camouflaging her pregnancy is the wardrobe designer, because she's the only person who knows that Veronica is pregnant.
Until
the end.
Closer to the end of the filming, when Preston Sturgis found out, and he was mad.
He was pissed.
So, back in Kansas City, the girl tells Sullivan that his wife got remarried. There's all these people yelling and taking photos, and she's explaining to him, your wife got married.
To the business partner.
To the business partner, because they thought...
Or the business manager, sorry.
Yeah, because they thought that Sullivan was dead. So she was off the hook to marry the guy, and she wasn't going to get any money from him anymore. So she married the guy. And of course, when we see the wife find out that he's still alive, she's in bed, and then they have those twin beds, and the business manager is in bed also, and she gets up mad at him and grabs this vase of flowers and breaks it over his head.
Serves him right.
Yeah. So they get on a plane to fly home, and the studio says they're ready to film. They tell him, get ready to film, oh brother. But Sullivan turns it down. He doesn't want to make a sad film anymore.
Well, that's good.
He realized that comedy has this place, and it does a service for people who have less than others, and it means something to people, and he wouldn't have realized that if he hadn't lost everything, including the control of his destiny, which I think was like really important. Like, he lost his shoes, and when he lost his shoes, he lost his identity.
Yeah.
And when he ended up in that work camp, like, it was the first time that something was out of his control. He could have always called the studio. He could have always gone back to the hotel until somebody took that ability to do that away from him. So it wasn't until he completely lost the control of everything that he realized what was really important. And of course, the universe, being this thing that always is putting them back in the right place, saw him home safely. Right.
I like it.
So there's something that you see at the very beginning of the film that I really liked, and it's the first thing you see is a book. The Sullivan Travels book, and these women's hands open up the book, and then the credits are played over the pages, right?
Yeah.
And then just before the movie starts, before we see the train scene, we see this line of text, and I want to read this line of text.
Please do.
To the memory of those who made us laugh, the motley mountebanks, the clowns, the buffoons, in all times and in all nations, whose efforts have lightened our burden a little, this picture is affectionately dedicated. Which I think is kind of, again, at the beginning of the film, they sort of make an early nod to what this film is really about.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's kind of the lesson that Sullivan learns throughout the film. Now, originally, that little thing was part of his speech at the end of the film.
Oh, yeah?
And they ended up cutting it out and putting it at the beginning in the text.
I'm still not entirely sure what a mountebank is in human terms.
I was going to look that up, but I just didn't have time.
A mountebank.
Yeah.
I couldn't find out who Veronica Lake's progeny was.
They don't want you to know, Steve.
It wasn't
What
on
if it was you?
IMDb. What if it was me?
You'd be older.
I would be older.
So that's Sullivan's Travels.
It was a fun one.
Yeah, it
was a fun
really
one.
great movie.
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't fallen asleep so many times. I rather would have slept through Mutiny on the Bounty.
You could borrow it if you want.
I just might do that, because now... Mutiny on the Bounty.
Well, we got a little something to talk about before we get to Mutiny on the Bounty.
Okay.
Our friends at Acid Ink Selection sent us a message this morning.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll just read you their message. They say, sometimes in life you learn some counterintuitive things, like the most expensive wine isn't always the best or necessarily right for a particular situation or occasion. We've got a wine that is affordable, very utilitarian, and is just a great everyday sort of offering. You know how hobos carry their clothes around in a bag on a stick? Well, this wine comes in a bag, in a box. Azzoni from La Marche, the east coast of Italy on the Adriatic, makes a white from Greco and a red from Sangiovese that are both simple, rustic, and great food wines. Best part is, with today's modern winemaking, this 3-liter bag, equivalent to 4 bottles in one bag,
Sign me up.
of wine will stay fresh, tasting like you opened it the same day for up to 4 weeks. Hobo wine for the people.
Nice.
So thank you very much, Acid Ink Selections. We appreciate your suggestion. We will make sure we list it in the comments of the podcast so people know exactly what to look for.
I'm thinking about going to get some of that wine.
Some wine. You know, it's funny. People sort of look down on boxed wine. I think it became sort of a joke for a long time, and I think it sort of has become less of a joke.
Well, they say it's actually a lot better for the wine than keeping it in bottles.
Sure.
So, tomato, potato. But it's like, yeah, of course, anything in a box and a bag is going to get made fun of at first. Look at bagged cereal, right?
Sure.
People are like, well, why would I buy that? Where's the box? It's like, well, idiot, you're paying more for the box.
I used to observe that screw cap wine bottles used to get bagged on a lot, and now that's changed as well. And I asked Acid Ink Selections about that one time, and they said that with the screw cap, you have less of an opportunity for the wine for the wine to get corked, or the mold or whatever grows on the bottom of the cork. So you don't have that likelihood of happening
because it's gross when that happens.
Screw cap,
Right.
Yeah.
So, anyways, interesting.
Thank you, Acid Ink Selections.
Yay. Mutiny on the Bounty.
Mutiny on the Bounty.
I got a couple things we can talk about at the beginning of this, and then we can get right into it.
What have you got?
This film was nominated for 8 Academy Awards.
Dang.
It won Best Picture.
That's the only one?
Yep. But what happened with Best Actor is the most interesting part.
What happened with Best Actor? I'm sure it's for Clark Gable and not the guy who played Captain Bligh, right?
Wrong.
Ooh.
Oh, really?
3 actors from this film were nominated for Best Actor.
Good Lord.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's the first time this happened, and I'm guessing because of this, I'm about to read.
The guy who played Hidi.
No, not
And
he.
then, what's his face?
So it was Clark Gable.
Right?
It was Charles Lawton, who played Captain Bligh.
Uh-huh.
And then Franchot Tonnet. I don't know how you say
Did he
his name.
play Byam?
He played Byam.
Uh-huh.
They were all nominated for Best Actor. So what they did is after that, the Academy said, we can't have this happen again. So they only nominated 4 people, 3 of which were from the same movie. They created Best Supporting Actor because of this film.
Nice.
Yeah, so if you ever wondered why they give that award, there you go.
Here it is, a movie about changing standards, and because of this movie, some standards were indeed changed.
So who do you think won Best Actor?
Not any of those 3 guys?
Not any of those 3 guys. The one guy who was not in this film won Best Actor.
Who was that?
Victor McLaglen in The Informer.
Oh.
So it's kind of like the Sunset
Yeah,
Boulevard thing again.
yeah,
They probably
right.
all canceled each other out.
Yeah.
That seems to be a trend in the Oscars.
So Frank Lloyd is the director of this film. His father was a mechanical engineer, and he installed engines and turbines and things into boats and ships.
Oh.
They went all over England, Scotland, Wales. They installed engines, and then there was some type of accident.
Oh.
And so he stopped working in that industry and opened up a pub. But
Cool.
But that sort of began Frank Lloyd's love of nautical things. So
All right.
it led him to make this film as well as 9 other nautical films.
Whoa.
I
Wow.
do not have a list of them, so don't ask.
Mutiny on the Bounty.
And a whole bunch of others.
Bounty of Mutiny.
Yep.
Mune-to-tie on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yep.
Mutiny on the Bounty.
Bounty.
Part 4, The Reckoning.
There you go.
The Reckoning.
And Bounty versus Brawny.
Yep. Do you want to do this?
Yeah. And
I can't wait.
feel free to
My notes are sparse on this.
Yeah, hey, that's okay, because I want to get through this movie fast because
It's gonna be a short
I'm
one.
not crazy about it. All right, so it starts in the year 1787.
Hey, that's true.
America had only recently freed itself from the madness of King George. And here this movie starts with, what's his name? Fletcher Christian. What was his rank? They kind of didn't really say. Everybody was just Mr. This, Mr. That, and then Captain Bligh.
He
But
was a ship's lieutenant.
a ship's lieutenant? All right, so Fletcher Christian, played by Clark Gable, is going around, I'm assuming, what was it, Portsmouth? I think it said it was labeled.
I think that's where they left from.
Yeah, and he's just basically pressing men into naval service. He's coming into
Kinda
this
sad.
bar, and he's going, hey, guys, the king needs 6 more men for this one particular ship.
You're
you
it."
guys are it.
Like one guy was
If
like,
you-
but I'm a tailor, and he like opens up the guy's shirt, and he's got a tattoo of a ship. on
Yeah.
his chest.
He's like, really?
Yeah, so that guy was clearly a Navy man in hiding. And then there's a young guy who has just had a baby and just gotten married, and Christian is basically saying, well, don't worry about it, because you're only going to be on the bounty for 2 years while your
Only.
baby is growing up. Yeah.
And does he explain where they're going at that point?
Does he explain where
I
they're
don't
going?
know. It's just
I don't.
I feel like they don't know
Think
just
so?
yet. But then again, at the very beginning of the movie, it talks about how the bounty set out. There's like
like a title card or something.
a scroll, a crawl, whatever you want to call it, that says the bounty set out from England to Tahiti on a 2-year voyage to bring back breadfruit trees and some other stuff.
Just like a green, spiky-looking fruit.
Yeah, and while on this voyage, these the crew decided they were going to mutiny against Captain Bligh, but also just against the abusive practices of the British Navy itself.
What's interesting because they didn't.
And we see a bunch of those.
They didn't actually tell us that they were going to mutiny in that scroll.
No, I
But
thought
we-
for sure it did say
I think
so.
I thought they just said they never made it.
Oh, okay.
They were going to bring these breadfruit trees that never.
bread-
never
Oh,
trees never
maybe
make
that
it
was
back.
it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I think we all
But-
kind of know from
Yeah.
the
the title.
of
Yeah,
and that's the
that
thing
there's
is, I thought it was
going to be a
interesting that
mutiny.
they like sort of buried it in there.
Yeah.
Even though we know that this is about a mutiny
right.
Yeah.
on this ship.
And therefore about mutineers. So what happens? Oh, so then we see a shot of Byam's home, if I'm not mistaken, and his father, Byam, is a midshipman, basically a rich kid, and his rich father is like, oh, it's going to be great, you're going to love going on the Bounty, and I've told Captain Bligh to be like extra nice to you and this and that and blah, 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 privilege, you're a rich kid.
And this is basically like an educational opportunity for him.
Right.
Yeah,
and
because when he gets on the ship, not to jump too far ahead, he sort of talks about, he and Fletcher Christian talk about how Christian's going to educate him.
Right.
Right, yeah. He's not there to be a sailor necessarily. He's there to learn.
Yeah,
stuff.
Basically the inner workings of the Navy and what have you.
This is probably a step, because he's in a wealthy family, this is probably a step towards being either something political or a higher up in the Navy.
Right, yeah. This is him basically cutting the line and getting to, not having to be a full-on grunt from the day he's born. Again, I'm going to blast through this thing.
Let's do it.
They get to the Bounty. They're getting the ship ready to take off. There's all sorts of guys in all sorts of sailor garb. They're all wearing a lot of stripes and what have you. Then there are the guys, the midshipmen, are wearing the fancy, not quite three-corner hats, but almost a little more like Napoleon's hat kind of a deal.
You know who was one of the sailors in the background?
Rick Springfield.
James Cagney.
Really?
So James Cagney was on his little sailboat sailing by. I saw them filming, and so he motored on up and said, "Hey, can I be in this?"
That's great.
Put him in the background.
Wow, that's hilarious. So Fletcher Christian and Byam and everybody, they're all meeting each other and this and that, and everybody's getting ready to have, we're trying to make the best of it here on the ship. And then a man with a peg leg gets brought up by cargo net.
Love that guy.
And he's kind of the ship's surgeon.
Yeah.
And what did they say his name was?
Well, I got confused because I heard two
I
different
also
things.
got confused.
There's one that was there's one person that they said was a derogatory term that is no longer used for gay people. Well, some people use it, but they're a-holes.
Dr. Bundle of Sticks.
Yes.
Basically.
You know how they call cigarettes in England a fag?
Yes.
It was kind of like that.
You're right.
So, later in the film, and I read that they changed that name for the remake of the film with Marlon Brando. But later in the film, I feel like they call him Dr. Bacchus.
Yeah, but it really sounds like on that first introduction.
And I looked it up when we were watching it. It does seem that that was the guy's name. Maybe they changed it while they were filming. I don't know, but maybe that was a different guy. I got confused by it, but
maybe the microphones in 1935 just there was a little bit of a sound glitch, but it sounds like he says Dr. F.
Yeah,
very similar to the scene in The Hangover when they say paging Dr. F. When they go to pick up Ed Helms. Mm-hmm. And then his girlfriend breaks his balls because his best friend's... What?
We're on the wrong movie.
My point is, I'm trying to get people to realize the thing that they're calling him without saying it. All right, so then Bligh shows up, and he is basically the most...
Can I just point out that this surgeon with one leg, comes onto the ship in a cargo net full of alcohol.
His alcohol.
And he's
alcohol.
Pretty...
His surgical supply of alcohol.
Right.
And he's drinking at the time. He's got a bottle in his hand.
He is already drunk.
Yeah. So,
it's all right.
A lesson for you. If you're going to go on a ship, make sure to keep the doctor drunk and happy.
They don't need him that often. It's just I
suppose that's true.
Ship in the 1700s.
I mean, yeah, they're all totally healthy and fine the whole time.
Limited resources.
Yeah, super limited resources. I don't even know how they... in those days, put that many people on a ship that small. Like, it's crazy.
It's not a big ship.
No.
And I think they make comments to that effect.
Yeah, so they right away, Byam shows up on the dock and he says, is that the Bounty? And the guy's like, no, that's the Bounty. And it's like a much smaller
stupid
ship.
idiot. Poor Byam. Poor this whole movie. All right. So then this guy shows up and he is being, well, Captain Bligh shows up. It's pretty clear Captain Bligh is just a hard-nosed jerk who prefers abuse over, like, teaching anybody anything. Very pompous, very much like, oh, you think this? Well, let me flog that out of you. And he's got this guy Morrison who does all his flogging for him. And
Permanent scowl on his face.
permanent scowl on his face. Scowl is almost too light of a term
It's just like
for
his
Captain
face,
Bligh's
it's like
face.
his face is melting from the sides.
A little
has,
bit,
like,
yeah.
Caterpillar eyebrows and like a weird grouchy fish mouth.
And even when he talks about something he likes, he frowns.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like his face is just shaped that way. Like,
Blah.
Impossible of smiling.
I don't think it's a coincidence that Captain Bligh's name sounds very close to the bad guy from the 90s cartoon Pirates of Darkwater, who, if I'm not mistaken, was Slythe or something like that. He had a name very much. It was gross. Anyway, this guy comes over on a little dinghy, and he is being flogged across the fleet, which means this dude fouled up so bad, well, according to Naval Command. I forget, what was his crime? It was something real simple.
He struck a superior officer.
He struck a superior officer. So this guy is being sailed to every ship that they come in contact with
in this bay.
And every captain is having this guy flogged a dozen times. So a dozen whips from each captain that they meet.
With a whip that has, what, nine? It's like nine.
It's a cat
Is it a cat of nine tails? Okay.
9
I mean, it had a bunch of dangly ends. So I
whips
assumed
at
it
the
was a
end.
cat.
Oh,
Yeah.
gross. See, I felt like I mostly saw Morrison just using that one like real short rope thing that he liked. I don't remember
with a
seeing.
knot in the end of
Yeah,
it.
with the monkey fist.
When the guy's down on the ship, he
Blah.
is untangling the little stringy things.
It's gross. It's so gross. So they go to whip this guy, and somebody's like, "Oh boy, looks like he's actually dead. We've flogged him to death before he got to the bounty here, Captain Bligh." And Bligh's just like, "Dead schmed. Give him his 12 flogs." So they literally proceed to beat a dead man because Bligh is just that sick, and the British Navy at the time was just that sick.
Beating a dead horse.
And
Yeah, but
Byam, right? Somebody passes out. I think it's Byam.
yeah, Byam passes
Yeah.
out.
And then, like, somebody goes to, like, pick him up, and he's like, and,
Yeah.
like, they leave him laying there on the ship.
Yeah, and then does Bligh send him to the masthead because of that, or is it something else? Anyway,
It's something else later.
yeah, somewhere along the line, my notes jump to that. Byam fouls up.
So, okay, so what happens
What have you
is
got?
there's 3 men who are dealing with charts and compasses and courses. I don't know what they're called. Midshipmen.
Yeah, the midshipmen, the
So,
navigation, all
These
that
3
jazz.
guys are all together, and none of them seem to know really what they're doing. And I think that's sort of this idea that all 3 of them are sort of in the same situation as Byam. Like, they're all
Right.
learning,
They're all
right?
there
Yeah.
for educational purposes. Sort
One
thing.
of them is a smarmy little bastard.
He's essentially the Napoleon Dynamite of 1935.
Yeah, and so what Byam does is he, without the guy knowing, starts to cut away the rope on his hammock.
Oh,
To
right.
play a little prank on him. Now, when they all get called up to report something, and the little smarmy guy sort of tattletales
Yeah.
on the dude for not knowing his stuff, and Byam sort of speaks out of turn to sort of stand up for his friend, and Bligh doesn't like the fact that he's speaking out of turn,
Right.
and so he orders him to go. He orders he doesn't order him yet.
Yeah.
So he orders him to go back down,
Yeah.
and they start to go down, and he Byam goes in ahead of the Napoleon Dynamite guy, the smarmy guy, and the smarmy guy kicks him in the butt, right?
Right.
So Byam turns around and gets back out and tries to start a fight with him, and that's when Bligh is like, "Smarmy guy, get back down below. You, Byam, climb to the
Yeah.
top of the mast." He's like, "All the way to the top?" He's like, "Yeah."
Yeah,
It's
he
like,
Meanwhile,
keeps
a
saying, "I'll
storm
send
is
you
rolling in.
aloft." Right.
Yeah, he's like, don't come down until I tell you.
Yeah.
Right.
You can come down.
And the storm is rolling in. Now, so Byam goes up there and ties himself to the mast.
That's what you got to do, apparently.
And the smarmy guy goes down and tries to get into his
Into his hammock.
His hammock, and Fletcher Christian is down there as well.
Right.
At this point, and the hammock breaks, and there's a little kerfuffle, and
Fletcher Christian tells
he asks the other guy,
the handsome guy.
to come
say
out. The handsome guy to come out, and he's like, "Who did that?" And he's like, "I did, to protect his friend who's already up on the mast."
Yeah.
And thinking he's going to get a lecture or punishment, and Fletcher goes, Good job.
Yeah, Fletcher's glad because he knows that other guy is a chump who's, throwing around his rich daddy status and trying to bully people.
Meanwhile, all of them have gotten seasick already.
Yeah, so poor Byam, he's tied to the mast all the way at the top. There's a storm rolling in, and he's just getting beaten by the storm. Just there he is, exposed. Maybe he's got a shirt on and some pants.
Yeah.
But other than that, he's just getting hammered on by this storm. They're not too far from England at this point, so we can assume it's a pretty cold, nasty storm in the northern Atlantic
out
or
up
something.
there, like hanging over the mast.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
like the only thing keeping him there is the rope that he
the rope
tied
that he
around
tied
himself.
himself.
Yeah, and then he winds up being brought down. Christian orders that he be brought down, right?
Yeah, because he's gonna die.
Yeah, and so he gets him all the way downstairs, out of the storm, into shelter, and then Captain Bligh is like, who ordered that man down? Get him right back up there. He doesn't come down till I say he comes down. And so poor Christian has to go back downstairs and say, Byam, you're going aloft again.
He takes
Captain's
the doctor's
orders.
coat.
Yeah. The doctor
gives
gives
him
him his coat, which is very nice. The doctor is, I think, on his first or second round of explaining one of the ways that he lost his leg.
We hear several. Yeah.
It
Yes.
changes every time. It's like the Joker's scars.
The doctor
So
gives him some brandy to take with him.
Yeah, he's like,
Oh,
you're going to
yeah.
need this.
that's helpful. So he gives him brandy and a coat. Byram manages to survive while aloft yet again. And then what the heck happens? Byram's sent up to the masthead. Oh, then there's a great big montage of torture and discipline. And
yeah.
one of the fun ones is a guy that we don't really know too much about. His offense is pretty minor, and Captain Bligh orders him to be keel hauled. Which, if you're not familiar with keel hauling, it's basically they tie a rope around you,
Around both arms,
around both arms. They drop you off one side of the boat.
the front of the boat.
Is it the front and they drag you to the back?
drag
Oh,
you
I
to
thought
the
it was just off one side and they drag you
No,
to
because
the other
boat's
side.
going that direction anyways.
Oh, yeah.
They go from
Blah.
the stern to.
Yeah, so basically they drag you all the way under the bottom of the boat, where I think you're pretty much guaranteed to die,
Yeah, I mean.
while also scraping against wood and barnacles.
Now I remember, and I remember when I was in school, we read Treasure Island. They talk about keel hauling,
Yeah.
as well. And yeah, pretty much those barnacles just are essentially just shred you up.
Yeah,
Completely just tear you up.
I imagine so.
Although when he comes up, he has no wounds,
He
no
was a-
cuts on him.
I
no
thought
cuts
he
on him.
was.
maybe
Thought he
they
had some cuts.
maybe they shredded him so hardcore that they got down to a layer of perfectly flat
I
skin.
remember a guy they whipped.
They
had
just
a lot of cuts on
exfoliated
but
him.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Exfoliated his into his
Exfoliated
kidneys.
via keel hauling. So I think it's pretty safe to assume he's dead when they drag him up out of the
When
water.
they say he's dead.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
say he's dead.
So
Yeah, he's definitely
Because
dead.
is that the one they talk about? No, that's the doctor. Later, who's they talk about? Something about the shark. They don't.
I
wanna-
might have
the
that
shark is
waiting
waiting
in the
for
notes.
burial.
Oh, right,
yeah,
That's
he's like
like a burial
following
later.
them, yeah.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's yeah, I think I have notice of that. What's fun is when they keel haul the guy to shoot the keel hauling scene. They use kind of a funny little action figure.
Yeah.
That's very obviously fake,
Yeah.
and they drag it under a boat in essentially a fish tank, and show it, and it's it's disturbing enough. Let's put it that
Right,
way.
yeah.
We don't need any modern day blood and gore for a keel hauling scene. Where the heck are we? All right, so now Fletcher Christian gets in trouble for stealing cheese. Bligh accuses him of stealing cheese.
Well, it's not Christian that stole the cheese.
I thought Bligh accused Christian of stealing the cheese, though.
No. That's
I mean, I know Christian
that's,
didn't steal
That's
the cheese.
coconuts later. So
Coconuts.
So what happens is they're like, we got this problem. Somebody's stealing cheese. 2 50-pound wheels of cheese have
Yeah.
disappeared. And the guy he's like, no, I didn't steal the cheese. When we were close to your home, you had me leave the ship and take the cheese to your house and leave it there. And Bligh's like, I did no such thing.
Right. When clearly he did.
Clearly he did.
Because you can tell by looking at him, he likes his cheese.
And Christian's like, look, maybe you didn't know he was taking them to your house, but clearly the guy didn't steal the cheese. And Bligh's like, nope, we're gonna whip him, or right, whip him.
Yeah, I think they actually tie him to a rocket ship. And no, they don't do that. They don't have rocket ships in 1787. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they flog him a lot more than he deserves. Wasn't it something like 4 dozen or some
Yeah,
crap
something
like
like that.
that? It's awful.
Yeah.
I hate this movie. I'm skipping ahead. No, I don't really hate it. But I kind of hate Captain Bligh so much.
Absolutely.
That's poisoning
That's a
the movie
testament
for
to
me.
the actor.
Yeah, true.
It's this movie is pretty brutal.
It's brutal.
It's interesting because it is brutal, but it's not like, when you think of something brutal by today's standards,
Right.
Like even like 20 years ago, think about like how brutal a movie like Silence of the Lambs was, or something like that, right? But this movie by today's standards is actually quite tame. It's just
The ideas are brutal.
it's primitive. It feels
Yeah.
primitive,
Right.
Because everything is just, oh, you fouled up, we're going to beat you unmercifully.
Yeah, it's not
Like-
so much like gory. It's just like, holy cow, people were treated this way.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
And I
Yeah.
think we maybe skipped it. There's another moment, and it's actually kind of important, where there's sort of a group of men. One of them is the young man that they enlisted that didn't want to leave his wife.
Yeah.
And then there's another one. They sort of say at the beginning of the movie that these men have sort of had two choices. They were either enlisted, or they were criminals and had a choice of either going to prison. And there's another man who is among them. There's the guy with the tattoo on his chest. There's the kid, and then there's this other guy.
The guy with the many wives.
Who was a thief, I think.
Yeah.
And with the guy with two wives, and he gets in trouble for, I think, quote, lying. I don't think he lies.
Isn't he the guy that lies about the cheese?
No, that's a smaller guy. That's a
Oh,
smaller
okay.
guy. And so this guy also gets lashes as well.
Yeah. So basically, there's a little faction of abused people forming.
And that's important.
For sure. Faux show. Gosh, do they arrive at Tahiti? I think they do arrive at Tahiti pretty soon after the cheese horde.
I mean, yeah. And at this point, Fletcher is sort of distancing himself from the captain.
Right, they have that moment at the dinner table where
the captain has a meal.
Bligh offers them each cheese.
And they all turn it down.
They all turn it down because they're all like, you're a cheese thief yourself, sir. But we're not going to eat your stolen cheese.
But it's on sort of the... they're all sort of following suit from Fletcher. Fletcher's the first one.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, he's like, why should we get the cheese when no one else does? Because he bans cheese from all of the other men.
Right.
Nobody gets cheese anymore. So they're sort of like, well, why should we eat cheese if the other men don't get to eat cheese? I don't like cheese anymore.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Freaking Captain Bligh.
And so Bligh and Fletcher Christian, who at the beginning of the film, we learned that Bligh had requested Fletcher specifically to serve under him.
Right.
And there's actually sort of this thing where I got the feeling that Fletcher didn't want to be there anyways. He says, well, it wasn't my... He's like, we're here together again. And Fletcher says, well, it wasn't my request. And he's like, well, I requested you.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me think, well, Fletcher wouldn't have requested to be with him because he already knows.
Right. He knows that Bligh is a monster.
He does give him credit at some point in the film where he says... He's basically says he's a terrible human being, but he's maybe the best sailor I've ever seen.
Ah, yes. Touche.
I think Fletcher. Fletcher knows the rules of the Navy. Like he's not unfamiliar with the punishments that these men are going to get for doing things wrong, but he knows that Bligh is taking advantage of the system.
Right.
Yeah.
Bligh is...
He's power hungry.
He's just blindly punishing people for no damn good reason.
Yeah, it's probably safe to say he's a psychopath. Certainly a sadist.
Definitely a sadist.
But yeah, he's getting off on the punishment. He's getting those nautical rocks off on all this punishment.
There is another scene that I really loved that's before Tahiti.
When they kiss, when Bligh and Fletcher kiss.
Yeah, when Bligh kisses everyone.
Blech.
So...
let me put my lips on you.
They get a little cabin fever. The wind stopped blowing, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And they sent, including that guy that got whipped that I was referring to a little while ago, they send the men out into two boats to pull the ship into wind.
Right.
Essentially. And in one boat is led by Byam, and the other boat is led by the little weasel.
Yeah.
And the weasel is just cracking his whip into his men.
Yeah.
And Bligh is kind of like, use your whip by him. And so Byam sort of waves his whip around in the air, but doesn't actually strike his men. And, of course, they do end up pulling,
Yeah, Byam's being much more like motivational than punishing.
He's compassionate.
Right. He's being a good leader.
So
as opposed to these other creeps.
They pull the boat.
Let's call it a ship.
Okay,
I'm just kidding.
They pull the ship into the wind. They get the wind. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And they end up back on the boat, and then the kid who's away from his wife.
Yeah, the new dad
comes in and he's like, "They gave me the food for the 6 of us. It's this," and he holds this like little chunk of horse meat. They tell him it's pork.
Yeah,
but it's actually they know
horse.
it's horse meat.
They're like, no way.
And it's way too little for 6 men.
Right.
Especially 6 men who just rowed a ship.
Right.
And that was sort of their
the
point.
Wind. Yeah.
Was we just did all this work, and that's all they're giving us to eat.
Yeah.
So they decide to take it. They put it on a hook, and they fish like a big tuna or a swordfish or something.
I'm pretty sure it's a shark. I think they catch a shark.
Oh, it was a shark. You're
right.
Right. They refer to him as the shark.
And I think they
hunter
cut up a real shark on the deck of that ship.
Yeah, so they cut up the shark, and they're trying to divvy it up, and somebody comes up and is like, who had no part in it, and demands, who's a higher up, demands that he gets some. And the guy, the man that got whipped before that I was talking about, takes the shark and throws it in the guy's face. Well, that guy is his superior, so he gets in trouble for that as well.
Yep. They should have mutinied right then, if you ask me.
Well, I think there was a possibility. Now, also before Tahiti is the doctor's situation, correct?
Wait, what's the doctor's situation?
Our friend the doctor dies.
He dies before Tahiti?
Well, isn't the whole thing before? I don't remember. Is it before?
I almost don't even want to remember.
I guess it's after. You're right.
It's after. I think it's after.
You're right. It's after.
Oh, boy. They get to Tahiti. Let's get there already.
Just do Tahiti.
Because holy shnikes. So they've essentially been sailing for maybe a year at this point. Mm-hmm. They get to Tahiti. Bly basically says, all right, some of you are going to have to go ashore and start rounding up breadfruit trees to bring on board. Some of you are going to be on the ship making repairs so that we can make the voyage home. And he basically tells Fletcher Christian, because he's seen that Christian is kind of... not exactly happy with Bly's leadership at this point.
Well, and he knows that the men will follow Fletcher.
Yeah. So he basically says, Fletcher Christian, you're in charge of the ship's repairs, so you don't get to visit the island ever.
Right.
You get to be stuck on the ship with dudes and wood and, very little else.
And
Byam gets to go to the island.
Yeah, so
and fall in love with a girl and meet Hiti, the king of the Tahiti.
Well, so... Byam is supposed to create a Tahitian to English dictionary.
Oh yeah,
but he's supposed to come back every night, and so Hiti,
King Hiti,
the king of
with the hairiest, biggest mole you could ever imagine on your arm.
Holy cow, that mole!
It's a character unto itself.
He comes onto the ship, to meet them, and
hey,
there goes the dog again. So he comes onto the ship to meet them, and he sort of demands
Well, he's barking at Hiti's mole.
He demands that Byam stay on the island. He tells, and of course Bly is like, I got to do whatever this guy says because we need this stuff from him.
Right.
And now the king was supposed to come. Now the original person that came and met Hiti was Captain Cook.
Yes.
I'm assuming James Cook.
Maybe.
So, and he
Are
was
you
told,
thinking of James T. Hook?
No.
Okay.
That the king would come back and return.
Right.
And if the king wasn't going to return, there'd be a hat. And so Bly's like, "Go get the hat." And the guy's like, "What hat?" And he's like, "Just go get the hat." So he goes and gets the hat and gives him the hat. And then, of course, Byam gets to come and live on the island for the month or so that they're going to be there, getting breadfruit trees and repairing the ship.
Getting laid is what they're doing.
Like, you mean with the flowers? That's Hawaii.
I'm talking about the guys that get to go to shore all wind up with girlfriends pretty quickly. There's even that scene of the cook.
The cook.
And what is it? This girl's leading him back to her hut by the hand, and there's about 6 to 8 children following her, and she sort of makes a kind of a gestury, says something in Tahiti and gestures a lot, and he basically figures out they are all her children.
Yeah, she's like, these are
and
mine.
she's essentially recruiting him to be to be a dad of a new baby for her.
And he's like, no, and runs
he
away.
literally runs away, and it's quite funny. So then what else happens? So Byam's working on the dictionary, and he talks about how they have so many different words and definitions for just a look. Something as simple as a look can mean so many different things. And
he meets Tahani.
We get a pretty good idea what these looks are about. What is this? Crown property. Oh, yes. Hey.
Well, so before they come back and deal with Crown property, Hidi convinces Bly to let Fletcher off the boat.
Right, for like a day.
Yeah.
For like an afternoon.
Yep, so Fletcher comes out and he meets the other daughter.
Oh, yeah.
Her name is something with an M. Mamiti, I think.
Mamiti? It sounds right. I didn't write it down.
So he meets Mamiti, and they, of course, kind of fall for each other. And he and Byam and Miyamiti and Tahani, they all go off to
swap. They do a full swap.
No, they just go out and like swim. They race each other across the water. And hang out on the beach and stuff. And of course, eat bananas. And then some Tahitian guy comes up and he says something to Mayamiti.
Oh yeah, that Bly is demanding Christian get back to the ship.
And so she says something to him, and the guy runs off. And Fletcher's like, "Well, I guess I got to go." And she's like, "No, I told him that he couldn't find you."
Nice.
So Fletcher can, if they can't find him, he can't be told that he has to go back.
True that, yo. It's a big island.
Yeah.
Plenty of trees.
Fletcher gets to come back again.
Yeah.
When they're going to leave.
Yeah.
And she gives him a present.
She gives him a pair of beautiful pearls.
To
give to his mom?
Yep.
And that's very nice of her.
Yeah.
And then, long story short, Fletcher, Bly, I think, spots him getting the pearls. Does Bly himself, or does one of his underlings?
I think somebody tells him.
Yeah.
So when the men come back, they've got like their bunches of bananas they're bringing on for themselves. Right. And they're like, nope, that's property of the crown.
Property of the crown.
And they're like,
put it on the pile.
This was a gift. And they're like, all gifts are for everyone that goes into the pile.
Yeah.
And so, of course, most of the stuff ends up going to Bly. Bly just steals everything.
Because he's a jerk. I wish they would have just cut his head off in the first frame of the movie. Wouldn't have had to sit through this thing.
And then when Fletcher gets back on the boat.
Yeah.
Wait, but the pig.
Oh, yeah, there's a sad moment with the pig where a guy has something that was a gift for himself, and it was a pet pig.
Oh, yeah.
It was a cute little pig, and they're like, oh, that'll look good on the captain's table.
Yep.
So they're going to cook that pig.
When he says it's Monday wash.
Yeah.
They're like...
His name is Monday Wash.
And he was like, no, he's a pet. His name's Monday Wash. Like, I wasn't lying.
Aw, Monday Wash.
So Fletcher gets back on the boat, and they're like, on your watch, 20 coconuts went missing.
And he's like, what are you talking about?
And also, Bly demands that he hand over the crown property.
Well, that was... So he goes...
His pearls.
He goes... These coconuts went missing, and Fletcher's like, it wasn't me, and are you calling me a thief, and all this stuff. And then he's like, well, you are a thief. And he's like, how am I a thief? And he goes, you have property of the crown.
Ooh.
And that's when he brings up the pearls, right?
It's the pair of pearls you got from your loving girlfriend that are supposed to be a gift to his mom, but not in Captain Bly's ship. Captain Bly demands that he hands over the pearls.
Mm-hmm. Remember what Fletcher says to him?
Probably stuff
property of the crown, not the property of Bly.
Yeah, right. Guess what falls on deaf ears?
Yeah,
that.
I want to real quick talk about the Tahiti stuff.
Let's hear it.
You know where they filmed that?
Mexico.
Tahiti.
Really?
Awesome.
Yeah. So they shot the movie Tahiti off the islands of Catalina, Santa Barbara area. But the Tahiti stuff they filmed in Tahiti. And those are real Tahitians.
All right.
There. They shipped 9 camera kits.
Wow.
4 large generators. 50 techs. The cast. Literally tons of film.
Wow.
They shot like hundreds and hundreds. Like I think they shot almost 700,000 feet of film or something like that.
That's
Good
crazy.
night, Irene.
And it was really important. The reason why they did that was really important to Frank Lloyd, that they have some authenticity to the whole thing. So that's why they shot out on the water. And
All right.
So were all of the Tahitians, like even the ones who have speaking parts, are they all Tahitian, or are some of them
yeah,
are the actors?
I had this saved for a little bit later, but so the all those outrigger canoes.
Yeah.
They built 500 of those things
Whoa.
for
Jeez.
this movie. They employed 2,500 native Tahitians for the film.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Probably your answer.
2,500.
The
I just
woman,
meant like, is that all the background actors, and then the like 3 or 4 Tahitians that have lines?
2,500. I mean, there weren't 2,500 people with lines, so yeah, I would assume all the background people were.
No.
Actually Tahitian.
But I'm saying, were the people with lines also Tahitians?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still don't think Tahini was.
Tahini, played by Movita. I believe she was.
Oh, Movita.
She went on to marry someone very famous. Would you like to guess who it was?
Is it anybody in this movie?
Nope. Well, not this movie.
Is it anybody from another Navy movie?
Yes.
Oh.
Frank Lloyd.
No. That's a great answer, though. But no,
Is it an actor
it is an actor.
from another Navy
Play
movie?
along, Boosters. Play along.
Movita, married to
Got some dead air here.
Douglas Fairbanks.
No.
No, he would have been way older.
Later on, she married Marlon Brando,
Oh.
who played Fletcher Christian in the remake of this film.
Wow.
Oh, interesting.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Way to go, Movita.
Yeah. What up, Movita? All right. So, anyways, you were so they're leaving.
Yeah, and shortly,
Well, there's something with the breadfruit trees that they talk about just before they leave.
right, the scientist, I guess,
Botanist?
botanist, something. Basically, one of the jerks who's just in Bly's pocket and, accepting all of Bly's gifts that he's withholding from the other men, talks about how the breadfruit trees are going to need all this water. And Bly's like, well, that's simple. We'll just cut the rations to the men
Well, in the
so that we can get the breadfruit trees there alive. Who cares if some men die?
I think he sort of said that the breadfruit trees required more water than the ship could even carry.
Yeah, he did.
And he was like, we're going to get these trees there in perfect condition,
Yeah.
every single one of them, and we'll just cut all the men's water rations to like a quarter.
Awful.
Yeah. And he kind of says, like, that's the mission. That's the whole goal of this trip.
The men aren't the mission.
Yeah, right.
Right.
They're
He's
just
like,
to Bly, they're just prisoners.
right. They're just
They are essentially
collateral
prisoners.
damage.
Yeah, it's awful. There's a mutiny.
Well,
I
that-
forget exactly what kicks it off,
Well, so
but those 3 guys are like, yeah, we're squirrely and we're sick of this.
they they're gonna punish someone. This might have been. Well, this wasn't the shark part. This might have been the shark part. They're gonna
Might have
punish
been.
someone, and they're like, all the officers need to be up here. Get the doctor.
Yeah.
And they're like, the doctor's way too sick to come up, and he's like, get the doctor. And so
That's
they go down. Byam goes down it, right?
I think
Byam
so.
or Fletcher,
Pretty
one
sure.
of those two goes down, and they see him, and I think it's Byam, and he's like, the doctor tries to get up, and he's like, no, just stay here. So he comes back up and says, I told the doctor to,
Stay in
stay.
bed.
So the doctor comes
Die
up
comfortably.
anyways,
Because
Yeah.
he knows that that's not going to fly.
Yeah.
With
and he dies.
Bly.
And they're
Oh,
like,
boy.
and they all look at Bly like, you made this guy come up here and you killed him.
Yeah.
And then that's when they start talking about, well, there's a shark that's been following the ship, Fletcher. We need a gun so we can scare off the shark. Maybe I could kill the shark that's on the ship at the same time.
That's what he says,
And
yeah.
And Fletcher's like, you know what? No. Something happens to Fletcher that just sends him over.
he goes, there's 2 men being held in the bottom of the boat who I think tried to not get back on the boat when they left Tahiti.
No. They were caught as what is it?
Mutineers?
Not mutineers,
No.
people that tried
Deserters.
to deserters.
Deserters.
Yeah,
They were
tried
caught
to-
as they didn't actually try to desert, and they say that when they get back on the boat, they were never allowed off the boat the entire time that they were there.
Right.
And so before they left, they just wanted to see the island, so they snuck out to go see the island, but they didn't actually want to desert.
Okay.
They did want to come back to the boat, but they were caught. You're right.
Yep.
Right. So they're down there, and they're, the somebody's down there getting water, and they want water because they probably have not been given any water in a while, and a fight ensues, and Fletcher hears it and comes in, and he's like, "Whoa, what the heck, guys?"
What the heck, guys?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember exactly why Fletcher agrees to the mutiny.
I think it's
because these prisoners are being mistreated, like they're being beaten because they want water.
Yeah, but there's one last straw, and he's like,
See, I think it's the crown property, and there is the moment where Bly comes back up, and he's like, "Oh, you're on watch again, Fletcher. I better count the coconuts."
that might have been it.
That might have been it. Yeah, he's
So he
basically
goes and gets
saying
the
like,
guns.
"Yeah,
And he's like, you guys wanted to shoot the shark. Let's do it.
yeah." Oh, they should have done it on day one.
So they round up they fight and round up all of Bly's supporters.
They get
of
every
Bly.
weapon they can, knives, spars, what have you.
Now the midshipmen don't know exactly what's going on. They're doing, all of a sudden these men barge in and knock them out and leave them unconscious in their rooms.
By him and his handsome friend.
Yeah, in the quarters. But they round up the weasel guy.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, if you're a supporter of Bly, you're getting on this ship. And they're like, no, let's kill him. Kill. They definitely want to kill Bly.
Yeah.
And Fletcher says, we're not killing anybody. We're going to put him on the boat. We're going to give him 20 days of supplies or whatever. And we're going to let him we're going to let the sea deal with him.
Yeah.
Let him fight the sea. And
boy, do they.
It's interesting to note, by the way, Charles Lawton,
Yeah.
played Bly, deathly afraid of the water and was seasick almost the entire
Really?
shoot.
Oh, jeez.
That explains so much of every expression on his face.
Well, or lack of.
Yeah.
I mean, he still managed to pull off an excellent performance.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that he was seasick that whole time.
Wow, way to go, Charles Lawton.
So they put him in the boat and start to sail away from him, and they're all looking out off the back of the boat, and one guy wants to shoot him. The shark killer wants to shoot him.
Yeah.
And Christian stops him from killing him. And Bly's like, we're gonna make it back to England, and we're gonna get you, and all this stuff. Whereas the rest of the men on the boat are like, we're going to our doom.
Yeah. Bly's going to kill us all. Probably by starving us to death while he eats.
Yeah.
That munch. Where do Christian and the mutineers go?
They go back, right?
Back to Tahiti.
Back to Tahiti to fall back in love and hang out with King Hidi and
Now,
all sorts of fun
Liam
stuff.
wakes up and has a confrontation with Christian. And he's like, I need to go with Bly. And they're like, they're already gone.
Yeah.
Because he's sort of torn between his friendship with Fletcher and his loyalty to the Navy,
Right.
But ultimately, like, the loyalty to the Navy that's like penalty of death. So, he's got to get back to Bly. Well, of course, Bly's already gone, so
Right.
they have no choice but to go back with the men. And they sort of make an agreement with the other people who didn't want a mutiny.
Right.
If you don't get in our way, we're going to let you live.
Right. And when they eventually come for us, we'll attest to the fact that you guys stayed loyal.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so the whole bunch of them go to Tahiti and live it up.
Yeah, for quite
Bananas,
Or
babes,
a while.
at least a
Coconuts.
year.
At least a
seems
year.
like.
roughly a year. Yeah, because I think, what is it? Bly comes back after them. He makes it to land. First, he's sailing his tiny boat with, 20-some guys on it,
Something like that.
crammed into this thing. And they keep showing him writing in the captain's log.
And that they keep
And-
cutting rations and water and
Yeah, but also he's also always aware of the longitude and latitude,
Yep.
which I'm assuming he can only know from like looking at the stars.
Yeah.
So he is that good of a sailor, and he figures out that they must be headed toward this piece of land. I think it was called like Timor or Tamir or something like that.
They went to. I have that actually here. Let me
don't.
take a look.
I think in these scenes too, like it.
Timor.
Timor.
Which is the Dutch East Indies.
Ooh, welcome.
What were you gonna say?
I was just saying that I think in these scenes it becomes evident that Bly knows that if he treats the men in this small boat the same way he normally treats the men under him, he's not going to make it alive.
That's
like,
probably true.
He rations to everyone equally,
And
and he gives them like speeches and
And he
prayers.
refuses to let one of them die. One of them
Right.
says, "Give my stuff to the men who are younger and have more of a life.
Yeah.
And he's like, nope, I'm the captain. You're going to live.
Yeah. So Bly is finally becoming a quasi good guy.
But it's almost it's only to save his own skin. Really.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's only because he knows he won't make it out alive if he isn't.
They might very well eat him,
Right.
which sounds probably like the worst guy you could possibly eat. So they make it to Timor, and they're saved. And the men, whatever of them haven't died of starvation and dehydration are going to be in good hands now. But Bly then sets sail on the Pandora, knowing full well that Fletcher Christian and company are probably living it up on Tahiti, having fire dance ceremonies and maybe inventing surfing for all we know. And so the Pandora sails to Tahiti to capture Fletcher Christian and the rest of the mutineers. And as soon as the ship is in sight, somebody warns Christian, and Christian's like, yo, dudes, we're busted. Let's get on the bounty. Let's go as fast as we possibly can. You guys that we agreed were loyal to the Navy, you stay here. You'll be fine. It'll all work out in the wash that basically, if you stayed to be captured, you must be loyal. Mm-hmm. They take off on the bounty. Somewhere in here.
And Fletcher and Byam sort of really have that nice reconciliation.
Right.
On Christmas Day.
On Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's right.
At their hut with Fletcher's new baby.
New baby.
Yeah.
That the men carve a little sailboat for the baby.
Oh, that's right. That was pretty
daughter.
cute. Oh, his cute little baby daughter with a new sailboat.
So the bounty leaves, but those other guys stay behind.
Yeah, Byam and a few other guys, they stay behind as loyal British Navymen. The very model of modern, I forget how the HMS Pinafore does it. Boy, what happens? Byam and the other prisoners, they join Bly, and Bly, what does he do? Does he welcome them home like heroes, like loyal heroes? Nope.
No.
Throws them in jail. Claims that that they're just as guilty as the mutineers.
Yep.
And they'll be, I don't know if it's called a court martial in
They're going to hang from the
Navy
yardarm,
terms.
is what he says.
But yeah, he's basically saying like, yo, you guys are you're going to be tried, you're going to be found guilty as mutineers, and you're going to pay. Is what you're going to do.
It's kind of like if you're loyal, you wouldn't have let them leave Tahiti on the bounty. Like,
Oh, I remember
you would
one
have
of,
kept them there until we got there.
one of the big things that set Fletcher off. I just remembered.
What was it?
He made him sign a forged log of like how much of certain things were there, and he was like, "This doesn't account because you've taken stuff.
Right.
I'm not going to sign this." And he forces him to sign it under penalty of death.
Right. Freaking Captain Bly. Does the Pandora make it all the way back to England?
The Pandora? No, it doesn't. So
There's a shipwreck.
yeah. Now the hold that they put them in.
Yeah.
Now, this is a true story, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You know,
Just like the Martian.
Yeah.
so. You know what they called the hold? Yeah, it's funny.
What?
On the Pandora, the actual name for it,
Pandora's box.
the box,
Whoa.
Pandora's box.
Pandora's box. And so they sail the Pandora to a planet inhabited by the Na'vi, where they mine for unobtainium. And that planet they name after the ship Pandora. What? The Pandora wrecks in a big storm or something, and the men
Because-
barely escape. Yeah.
Because Bly is intent on catching the bounty. Like, they don't turn back and just
They,
go
yeah,
to
that's
they
England.
wreck
right.
on the reef.
He
They wreck on the
chases
reef.
the bounty,
They're
and
like-
it causes them to wreck.
You
Bad
remember, You
idea.
can hear the guy measuring how many fathoms down the reef is.
Yeah.
They're like 20 fathoms, 10 fathoms.
And the other guys are like, dude, this ship is in bad shape. We got to turn back. And he's like,
Yeah.
no way. We're not going back without these
He
mutineers.
says we'll either get Fletcher or we'll sink the ship. is what he
Yeah.
says.
And he's right.
Yep.
They sink
So
the ship.
The ship breaks open in the hold. And so the box, Pandora's box, is taking on water.
Yeah, Byam and the other prisoners are chained up down there, and they're getting flooded while everybody else is abandoning ship. And then Bly decides to send somebody down to free them.
Yeah, when it's almost too late.
Yeah, well, not to free them, but to
Too late for
make
someone.
sure they remain captured and alive. So Byam manages to get out. A few other guys manage to get out, and eventually they somehow make it back to England, probably by boat.
The other midshipman, Byam's friend,
Yeah, the handsome one.
dies in the process.
Oh, boy. Oh, man. So they make it to England. The trial happens, right? And then later we see what happens with Christian and the Bounty. So Byam's on trial. All of these, highfalutin British Navy guys are asking him this, that, and the other thing. And then they basically say, okay, you're excused from this room. We're going to decide your fate. And somebody tips Byam off, and they're like, there's going to be a dagger on the table. And what is it? If it's
pointing towards
if it's horizontal, then you're not guilty. If it's pointing at you, vertical,
you're guilty.
Then you're guilty.
So he walks in, and it's pointing at him. But he's not quite doomed. He manages to make an argument for himself.
And against Bligh.
Well,
And
I think
against Bligh.
he kind of is like, you know what, I'm going to be convicted anyway. I might as well go out saying what I really feel.
Well,
Right.
they ask Bligh too, like, why do you think the men don't follow you? And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. And they're kind of like, gotta be some reason. Like,
And that you can tell the men. One of them is Nelson, right? Isn't one of them like Horatio Nelson or something like that?
Oh,
Like they sort of imply that there's like these famous
right.
Cook is there, so like these famous British they're Navy men, sailors are all sort of the head. These admirals or whatever are all the head of this court martial, and you can tell that these men have no respect for Bligh.
Right, because they probably are well aware of his reputation.
And so now like, I don't know why they're not following. They look at each other and just kind of like,
Yeah, and now, his abusive behavior has finally come to bite him in the in the butt. In his Bligh butt. So, Byam manages to not get executed, and then he even gets restored to duty as a midshipman. But before we see that, we see Fletcher Christian on the poop deck of the Bounty talking about, check it out, boys, there's Pitcairn Island. We are going to crash this boat and settle on that island and live free for the rest of our lives. Because if you want to do that, 1787, it's a time when, you pretty much already know how to live on the land back in those days. There was no electricity yet. There weren't even bicycles yet.
well, and there
might be bicycles.
They had
I'm not
natives to the other island with them,
Right.
so it's not
Yeah.
so it's not like it was going to be too difficult.
So they're just like, yo, there it is, Pitcairn Island. Let's become Pitcairners. Pitcairnians? It's hard to say. Pitcairnites? Pitcairnish. The Pitcairnish. Martians? Boom. And then they show a pretty cool scene of the ship not quite wrecking.
Yeah, kind of.
But they indeed took a full-size, tall ship and sailed it into some really rough waters right there off the shore. But I feel like they didn't show it actually wreck at all.
Now, I don't know that it's related to this scene, but they did capsize a boat accidentally and killed a cameraman and 2 crew members.
Oh,
geez.
Jiminy Jaminy.
Making this film.
that sea is
Yikes.
dangerous.
That's worse than Gone Fishing.
Nice.
You've heard about that one.
No, but I just the fact that you referenced Gone Fishing is...
The movie Gone Fishing with Danny Glover and Joe Pesci. Not a terribly successful movie about some middle-aged guys who go fishing. A man died in one of the stunts making that movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's...
Michael Bay film.
Is it?
Michael Bay... No, I was saying it's like a Michael Bay
Oh,
film.
okay.
He gets people killed on his sets.
Yikes. So, stuntmen, God bless you.
One of the James Bonds, somebody got killed. Skyfall, I think.
Really?
Somebody got killed this
Oh,
time.
no. Well, and now, so, Mutiny on the Bounty joins that horrible list of people getting killed trying to make a movie.
So, so they crash it on the rocks.
They crash it on the rocks. They settle Pitcairn Island, and then it cuts back to England. Byam is being put on a new ship with a new captain, and everybody's real happy to meet him because they probably heard about how,
The captain's nice to him, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he basically makes a big speech about how the system is flawed for the
Right.
Navy right now. Like, that they're treating free men
Right.
like slaves. Like, the sailors on these boats. Like, some of them are prisoners, yes, but some of them are just enlisted men who are free men
Right.
in England. Like, and why are they being treated so poorly? Like, basically.
That's a darn good question. And that mutiny on the Bounty was what changed, it caused them to reform their horrible rules.
How long do you think it took them to make this film?
Probably, I mean, if they went to Tahiti and took all that stuff, I'm sure it was a while.
I mean, they didn't sail there like in
No, I know.
I'll
but
say 2 years.
2 years, just
Whoa.
like the voyage was supposed to take.
Wow.
2 years, $2 million to make this film.
that's a lot.
$2 million,
For that-
$1935.
Yeah.
That's
I
mean,
a
that's
whole
even-
lot of money.
That's even still a mainstream movie
It's a lot of cups of
now.
coffee.
It's
Right.
not like a low budget film.
Right. That's essentially Avengers 1 and 2 combined.
Yeah.
No, maybe not, but
Um,
that's a lot of money for those days.
yeah. So now people have been removed from Pitcairn Island since
Yeah.
then. They resettled them on Norfolk.
All right. Norfolk.
Which was a penal colony
Oh.
at one point, and then people went back. Basically, the island was really small. The population grew to about 200 people, and that was too many for the island.
Wow.
That's how small the island was.
Holy shnikes.
So some people went to Tahiti, some people went to eventually they moved back, went to Norfolk. There's about 40 people that live back on Pitcairn now,
Cool.
and about half of them trace their roots to Fletcher Christian and
Wow.
8 of the sailors.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Pretty awesome indeed.
that is Mutiny on the Bounty.
There it was, folks.
Holy cow!
It's worth watching once, but it's going to make you angry. That movie made
Oh,
me
yeah.
angry.
Sure.
And
I fell asleep about 47
lengthy.
minutes in.
Angry is a good thing for if a movie makes you feel an emotion that's as intense as anger. That's a good thing.
yeah, I
I
think
suppose that's true.
I think that movie is doing its job very well. Like it's
Right.
It's not a pleasant movie to watch, but that's kind of the intention. I think it's
Yeah, there's a few other movies in our bucket that I know are going to make you angry. Get ready.
Wonderful.
They're great though.
They better be.
I think Mutiny on the Bounty was great. I really enjoyed the film. Again, I'm with you. I don't know that I need to see it a bunch of times. It kind of falls in line with some of those other ones. If somebody I knew hadn't seen it and they really, really wanted to watch it,
Yeah.
I probably would sit through it again. Not tomorrow.
Not me, man. I'd keel haul them.
Then they'll be keeled.
Blarp. That
it's
was
so
me.
cheesy.
That was me puking at the thought of keel hauling
Welcome to
somebody.
View the Right Thing, Des.
Welcome to my life with you.
Hi-oh.
So should we draw some movies? Should we talk about what our December announcement is?
Well, sure.
So our December thing is kind of like in October. We're going
Yeah.
to do a themed month, and
Why
we are
not?
going to do holiday films.
Holiday
We had a
films.
big list of films, and we're going to draw those 2 of those films now. We're going to do 2 podcasts, so 4 films total, and we're going to draw some films. There are films. There are some films that we have both seen. We're kind of breaking that rule right now,
Yeah, because holiday films,
I mean,
there aren't really all that many.
but we also thought.
well, there are also like you've seen them all.
Yeah.
and I think that we sort of thought, well, if we draw some films that are well-known films, that's actually kind of cool because then we can talk about things that maybe people don't know about these films that they've seen a million times.
True.
And it's going to be easier for people to find them. So,
Also true.
without further ado,
Do you want to reach into the bucket first?
I thought maybe you and Desi could draw
Oh,
Oh.
okay.
for them. So why don't you go first, Steve?
I feel privileged.
Yeah. So go ahead,
Okay.
Steve. Here's...
Alrighty. I want to dig deep. I want to dig deep down into the bucket. What's Wes doing in his phone while I dig?
Don't worry.
You're really digging in there, Steve.
I want to make sure. Oh, man.
Steve, what you got there, buddy?
I got The Ref.
All right, The Ref.
Desi, do you want to draw one?
Yeah, I'll be slightly less
Why would
Take
you?
less time.
crazy here.
All right, what you got, Des?
I mean, I think Steve mixed them up pretty well for me. I have Home Alone.
All right, The Ref and Home Alone.
2 90s super hits.
Super hits.
Mega blockbusters.
I don't know.
I don't know if The Ref was really all that successful.
No, I don't know. I don't know if that many people have seen The Ref. But that's great. So
Yeah,
hopefully,
I don't think I've seen that. So
The Ref's a fun one. I think it's on Netflix right now, too. So if you're listening, you can watch The Ref right now.
one of my early Dennis Leary, one of my pieces of early exposures to Dennis Leary.
Oh, really?
And Kevin Spacey.
This might be the first movie I ever saw Spacey in.
I didn't even know who Kevin Spacey was until The Usual Suspects.
Oh, yeah?
And then I was like, and then I had gone back and watched The Ref again. I was like, oh yeah, he's in this movie, The Ref. Yeah.
He has one of my favorite lines in that movie, which is,
Or was it
"It's
after that?
18th century French Huguenot."
Okay, let's not spoil it before we get to
It's
it.
just that one.
That is a good line.
It's funny.
Watch for that line when you watch the movies. So I'm sure you're going to be able to find Home Alone. I'm absolutely sure you're going to find The Ref, probably on Netflix.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw it on there already this week.
So get to watching these holiday films. Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays. I don't know if I'm allowed to sing that.
I mean,
So many of those
you didn't sing for
Christmas
more than 10
carols
seconds,
are,
so
you
I
know.
think we're okay.
Okay.
All right, so that's it.
That'll do it.
Thank you for listening. Thanks, Desi, for joining us.
Can I plug my new project?
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead, plug your project.
I just starting a new vlog
Ooh.
on
A
YouTube.
video blog.
Yes, about fibromyalgia. It's short. The first one just went up. It'll be up for a few days by the time this.
So
hits.
serious.
And it's serious, but it's like 3 minutes long, and it's just informative, but just kind of about daily life.
Where can they find that?
On my YouTube channel, which is Blueprint Betty, and
Okay.
that is also my Twitter.
All right.
All right.
Blueprint Betty. Learn about fibromyalgia. Wes, what's your Twitter?
Movie Hippo, at Movie Hippo,
And then what's my Twitter?
at Stephen Nohowood,
And then what's our Twitter?
at VTRT Movies.
Oh, yeah. So if you want to tweet at us, tweet at us.
Yeah,
Either one of those. And tweet at Blueprint Betty, too.
I gotta be honest, I love it when people are tweeting at us.
It's fun.
It makes me really happy.
Yeah.
We've gotten some great comments and some suggestions from people. Please keep them coming. We like the interaction. So it's nice to know you're there. We've been getting some really positive feedback about the show. Been picking up a lot of listeners lately. A lot of new subscribers.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's been a pretty great journey so far. Hello and thank you to our listeners, our viewsters in England.
England. We've got viewsters in England. And I
it-
just went and talked
So
all this
fancy.
trash about the English Navy.
Italy, hello. Buongiorno. Russia.
We've got viewsters in Russia?
Yeah. Germany.
Wow. Deutschland.
Guten Tag.
Whoa.
So thanks for listening, everybody, especially people all over the world. That's really cool, and we look forward to talking to you some more.
Watch Home Alone. Watch The Ref for next time.
And that's it. Bon cinema.